Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. The letter burned in the fireplace, the ashes scattered so that nothing legible remained. Marjorie had read the message silently. It was short and to the point, enumerating where, when, and what was needed. Snow wanted the castle cleared and House Mountain arrested before his arrival. Well, at least he isn't completely mad. Maidenpool is a better choice than King's Landing. No one wants to see Snow at the Red Keep again. Olenna said, Jon should arrive in less than a fortnight. If he left Winterfell with the Raven, he would be halfway to White Harbor now. The winds are good along the Narrow Sea and the Bay of Crabs, Owen said. My men are ready. Tyrell guards, Fossaway knights, House Crane and Ambrose archers, Oakhart, spears and lances. The Hightowers are willing to help. Sever Baylor thinks highly of Jon Snow. He will move his men east to reinforce us, Garland said. Maester Lomans has a carriage ready for Lyanna. There are also a few acolytes at Tumbler's Falls and Bitterbridge who may be useful. I have written to them. But not about Snow, Olenna asked sharply. Of course not, my lady, Owen replied. I only mentioned that the Reachmen in the Crownlands may need assistance. But after Garland secures Maidenpool, I will call for healers to come. Saul Baylor knows and Lord Fossaway, everyone else is in the dark. The knights only know that they must be armed and ready. These are our most loyal bannermen. They may be surprised when Snow appears, but they will follow my commands. Galen said, Good, Olenna said. I am coming with you to Maidenpool. Grandmother, Galen said. The Queen of Thorns shed any pretense of weakness or frailty. Garland, you are good at whacking things with a sword. But you are not in a clear state of mind to deal with the North. Your wife's fate weighs too much upon you. I will negotiate with Snow. Better me than the Lord Oaf of Highgarden. But, Lady Olenna, what is there to negotiate? Jon is paying back a favor. After this, we're even, Owen said. No one is truly even, child. The game never ends. I need to know more about his character and understand his motives. The young wolves have caused a great deal of trouble for the Iron Throne. There are no 7 kingdoms without Winterfell. Grandmother, he travels here as my guest. I will not see him harmed, Garland said. Jon is not complex. He says what he means, and he does what he says. And he does not speak for the wolves. Robb rules the north. Jon will come south, cure the plague, and leave. Owen said, Not before I meet him. Olenna dismissed Garland and Owen. She turned to her granddaughter. You are not surprised that I am leaving. Marjorie shook her head. Her grandmother did not like her schemes to be disrupted. Even though no harm had come to them, the Tyrells had been taken by surprise by the wildfire wedding. But that was nothing compared to the humiliation suffered by the Iron Throne. Joffrey still raged over the insult and how his lord hand had failed him. I would be curious too. A man who can cure the plague would be a better ally than an enemy. And you know how to play your part? I will be greatly surprised. I knew nothing about this. Garland was upset over his wife's illness, but I never expected him to do something so rash. My affections for Joffrey are unchanged, and House Tyrell remains a leal servant to the Iron Throne. Cersei will suspect you, but men always think women are foolish and incapable of schemes and bold decisions. You have not told your cousins. No, grandmother. Ella and Mega hide in their room playing games like Come Into My Castle. Eleanor complains that Ella might have to leave King's Landing. He has not told her why. Better that they don't know. Their surprise will help your pretense. The cat will be out of the bag once Snow lands. It will be a real cock-up. Olenna sipped the tea. Our spy has reported something. Tywin Lannister may have caught the plague. How do you know? There are few rooms in the holdfast, guarded heavily by red cloaks. A maester has been seen entering and exiting. Janna Lannister stays close by, and the Kingslayer and his uncle Caven are among the visitors. Who else could it be but Tywin? But you don't know if it is the plague? This whole wretched city suffers from the plague. No, we don't know, but it has been many days since the small council has met. Tywin would not shirk his duties unless he was quite ill. If he dies, who becomes Hand of the King? Marjorie asked. Olenna set down the cup. Sweetling, that is a very good question. The Red Witch had corrupted them all. Melisandre proclaimed with great certainty that Stannis Baratheon was Azar Ahai reborn, destined to drive back the darkness. Despite Maester Cressen's warning against false prophecies, the tidings had been most welcome. Davos admitted that he too had been swayed. Surely the prince that was promised would become king, but Stannis seemed closer to being the king of Grumpkins and Snarks than the Iron Throne. The Red Witch was strong in magic. It was more than smoke, powders, and the tricks of charlatans. She saw visions in flames. She birthed shadows out of darkness. She quaffed a goblet of wine laced with the Strangler and Smile. Cressen was not so lucky. The Maester had tried to poison Melisandre after she burned criminals in a bonfire of the Seven. Cressen died after a small sip of the cup. Stannis discovered to his bitter disappointment that spells and second sight led to no victories. No magic could create gold to hire sellswords. A prophecy that he was a Azor Ahai mattered less than Robb Stark's declaration that the last Baratheon was a kinslayer. Wars were won with gold, blood, steel, and dragons. Stannis had very little of the first three, and none of the fourth. Melisandre had not woken dragons out of stone. Davis prayed that she never would. On the deck of the Bountiful Harvest, Davos clutched a small banner depicting an onion on black sails drifting on a gray sea. Shireen handed him the embroidered cloth, a week ago saying that the hand of the king must carry his own sigil. Shireen was the last best hope for House Baratheon. She was a sweet girl, gentle, kind, and clever. If the gods were good, one day she would be queen. But until then, Davos swore he would keep her safe. The Red Witch hungered for king's blood to power her vile sorcery. There were only 3 candidates on Dragonstone: Stannis, Edric Storm, and Shireen. Davos shuddered. There were no limits to what Melisandre would do for the Red God. The whitewashed stone walls of White Harbor rose before them. The city was strongly fortified with 30-foot towers every 100 yards on the wall, dividing the inner and outer harbor. There were no seals resting on Seal Rock. Instead, he saw dozens of scorpions and even more crossbowmen hiding behind merlins and arrow slits. The Bountiful Harvest stopped, far short of the city wall. "Why are you not going further?" Davos asked. The captain spat into the clear, cold water. "The plague. All non-northern ships are banned from the inner harbor. But no one on board is ill. Doesn't matter, rules are rules. We are allowed to unload cargo at the jetty wall, but nothing more." Davos saw the white merman banner hanging on the walls of Newcastle next to the domed roof of a large sept surmounted by tall statues of the Seven. He needed to enter White Harbor. 20 years ago, he would have smuggled himself into the city. But now, he was the envoy for the king. "Announce to the Manderleys my name, and tell them I am on a mission for King Stannis." "Are you sure, Say?" "The Baratheons are not well liked here. The North thinks poorly of both Stannis and Joffrey. Winterfell wants nothing to do with the South." The captain said, "The Starks will not harm me. I came as a messenger under a banner of peace," Davos said. But the Starks didn't come. A squadron of watchmen led by a knight with a mermaid helm threw Davos into an ancient jail. The cell was large and well equipped with a table, a hearth, and a privy. But nearby there were torture chambers, dark oubliettes, and pits filled with stakes. Davos sat down and waited calmly for his fate. When he was younger, Tyrion enjoyed reading histories, curled up in one of the many caverns under the rock. Besides dragons, his favorite stories were about the Rogaers, the bold family of Lyseni bankers that profited by choosing the winning side in the Dance of the Dragons. Lysanore the Magnificent married his daughter Lara to a captive Prince Viserys, and his brother Drzenko to the Princess of Dorne, entangling House Rogaer in the political plots of the Seven Kingdoms. Lysanore has 9 children, and 16 bastards made a lush tapestry of swashbuckling tales of rogues, scoundrels, and damsels in danger. But unlike the Rogaers, the Iron Bank was devoid of any sense of romance or adventure. The room was exceedingly hot. King's Landing was warm in autumn, but the representative of the Iron Bank also sat between 2 huge fires, the dark eyes showing no discomfort from the great heat. The Bravosi even wore a brimless 3-tiered hat of purple felt matching the purple robes trimmed with fur. The man was tall, thin, and gaunt with no swagger. Unlike the 2 colorful Bravos staring at Bronn, Tycho Nesteros did not strut or boast. "I am sorry for the loss of your colleague," Tyrion began. "We who serve the Iron Bank face death as often as you who serve the Iron Throne. Nosha Dimitis may have contracted the plague, but the Iron Bank will see to the comfort of his sons and wife." Noso may have died of the plague, but there is more to this story. He was murdered, Tyrion said, before Baelish had him killed. The Brovasi did not show any shock. And how did Lord Beoslet use the plague to kill our envoy? New coins from the royal mint. The king's scale sent a sample to me, and my squire Podrick died of the plague 3 days later. One of the stags scraped his arm. A similar delivery was made to your man, and he also died of the plague, Tyrion said. Poor Noho. He always liked to bite coins to test their purity. A foolish practice. But that is not proof. What evidence shows that Baelish is the killer? He tried to kill me, Tyrion sputtered. Baelish is a thief and a liar. His plague doctors are here to rob the dying, not heal anyone. That may be true, but according to your tale, coins from the royal mint killed Noho. You were appointed the master of coins 7 moons ago. The king's scales, the king's counters, and the keeper of the keys report to you. You could have sent out the poisoned coins. Why would I do that? My squire died. The banker's face stayed cool and composed. Perhaps this Podrick needed to be silenced, or his death let you point the blame at Lord Baelish. Stranger things have happened than men killing their own squires. After the new stags were struck, the plague broke out among the workers at the Royal Mint. Most are dead, including Galbert Waters, the man who sent the coins. That is the work of Baelish. He is covering his tracks. Tyrion realized his error as soon as he spoke the words. Unfortunately, the Bravosi also recognized the mistake. What tracks? What is Lord Baelish attempting to conceal? Tycho Nestoris asked. I will ask the question in a better way. You told me how Baelish killed Noho. But why did he kill him? Tyrion gulped. There was no goblet of Arbor Gold or Dornish Red to play for a delay. The man from Bravos did not care for wine. Perhaps they had their differences, or Noho thought Baelish a thief. Tycho Nestoris took out a small lacquered box etched with the Titan of Bravos. He opened the lid, showing a stack of silver stags with the face of King Joffrey. Baelish is a thief, a much larger one than we suspected. But when did you find out about his crimes? I don't understand. What crimes? Drips of sweat beaded down Tyrion's face. You know exactly what I mean. You would not have asked the Royal Mint to send a shipment of the new stags otherwise. But how did you find out? You did not know when you were appointed Master of Coin. If you did, you would have replaced Baelish's men. I can't tell you that. My loyalty is to the Iron Throne, not the Iron Bank. Tyrion retorted. But you do know the silver stags and gold dragons have been debased for many years. The Iron Bank does not like to be cheated, Tycho said. That was Baelish, not me. I have been aware of this less than a moon. Tyrion said, We will settle accounts with Peter Baelish. As for the debts incurred by the crown, they will be paid back properly in the correct weight of gold and silver. The Iron Bank will have its due. Tycho Nestoris stood up without smiling or shaking hands. The meeting was over. After Tyrion left the small mansion, a slender, handsome man with fine features emerged from the shadows cast by the fires. He was dressed in the style of the free cities, and would have looked like a rich merchant except for the odd hair, white on one side and red on the other. Neither color appeared quite real. Did you follow the conversation? Tycho asked. A man hears, Jaqen Kadar replied. Do you believe him, that Noho died because the silver stags were coated with the plague? Merchants often bite coins. But who sent these coins? A man does not know. The many-faced god does not judge right or wrong. He only needs a name. Peter Baelish, for killing an envoy of the Iron Bank. Jackson nodded in acceptance. This will take time. Baelish has not left the Red Keep in days. He sleeps in Magger's Holdfast. He has at least 4 guards, perhaps even some of these plague doctors. And if the dwarf is right, he has killed many people in the past 2 weeks. But you will catch him. No Bravosi doubted the House of Black and White. Of course. Valor Morgulis. Jaqen disappeared back into the darkness. Ned Stark had taught his children that every house sworn in the North had their strengths and shortcomings. The Mormonts were loyal but poor. The Boltons were powerful but cruel and sadistic. House Karstark had started as a cadet branch. That tied them closely to Winterfell, but also fueled their presumption. Of all the Stark bannermen, Jon liked the Mormonts and the Mannerleys the best. House Mannerley had a silly but annoying flaw. They loved to eat. A feast to celebrate your visit. Wyman smacked his lips. Lamprey pie, stuffed eels, clam, cod, and crab chowder, served in a freshly baked loaf of bread. Lamb roasted over a spit with mint and garlic. A pork pie the size of a man's chest, and not a small man, either. Jon smiled at the Lord and his two big-boned sons. They were definitely not small men. Lady Lyanna, Sir Wylis's wife, was plump, but she and her daughters were slim compared to the males of their family. Lord Manderley, I do not wish to impose on your stores, Robb said. It is no problem, my lord. The harvests from golden fields have filled the larders. More storehouses are being built for the winter, but there is plenty to eat. Wyman responded with enthusiasm. Lord Wyman, we are grateful to your family for the hospitality. But I must hurry south, and my mission is secret. I do not wish to alert others of my presence, Jon said. And I need to return to Winterfell to Bran, Sansa, and Rickon. Our stores may be in good shape, but winter is coming. I want to make certain our new knights and lords are ready. I am sorry that you cannot stay, a disappointed Wyman said. Winifred and Willow will show you to the guest quarters at Newcastle. I would like to see the plague victims and any bodies. I also wish to speak to any healers who saw the sick, Jon said. Only a few fell ill in the city because we sealed the harbor early. They have been taken to the mother house near the sept, Wendell said. Wyman nodded. There is something else. A man arrived a few days ago, asking to speak to House Stark. We detained him in the wolf den, but gave him a large and comfortable cell. I have met him before, a skilled smuggler, Sir Davos Hewworth. He claims to be hand for Stannis Baratheon. The wolf den was nothing like Newcastle. The elegant and well-designed seat of House Manderley, the ancient fortress had been raised by King Jon Stark to defend the White Knife from raiders and reavers. For a long time, the Wolf Den had a sinister reputation, captured several times by foreign invaders and changing hands between many failed houses. That ended when the Starks granted the stronghold to the Manderleys, who had the foresight and the wealth to develop the lands around to become White Harbor. Jon and Arya waited as Robb peered through a spy hole. The guards stood back respectfully, allowing the Starks some privacy. I have seen this man before, Robb said, surprised. Where? Jon asked. At the parley between the Baratheon brothers. Stannis had two followers at his side, the Red Woman and Davos. Sir Davos did not speak at all. He could still be the hand of the king. I said. But if he is, that raises another set of questions. Robb said. Did Stannis send him to parley, and alone without any guards? What is so important that Davos would risk imprisonment? The North is not friends with Dragonstone. We have no desire to put Stannis on the throne. We don't need to wonder, ask him directly, Jon said. The door opened, revealing an ordinary-looking man with a weathered face and salt and pepper hair. On the drab-brown cloak there was a silver clasp of a hand, and on the wood table there was a banner of an onion sail. His brothers stepped through boldly, and Jon and Arya followed, but stayed in the shadows. Sir Davos, I am Robb Stark. What business do you have in the North? I am hand of the king for Stannis Baratheon. We do not bend the knee to kinslayers in the North, Robb said. But surely you do not follow Joffrey, Davos said. We don't bend the knee to Joffrey Waters either. Speak your business, Saray. The Red Woman, Melisandre, saw a vision of forces rising in the North. The Great Other, the enemy of her god Redior, is gaining strength. Stannis intends to unite the realms against this threat. He plans to sail north to defend the wall, Davos said. What forces? Robb asked sharply. The others, an army of the dead that brings the cold and night. Do you trust this Red Priestess? Trust, no, but she has magical powers, and Stannis believes her. She has declared that he is Azarakia reborn, destined to drive back the darkness with Lightbringer. Davos said. Lightbringer? What's that? Arya asked. A flaming sword, the red sword of heroes. Melisandre bequeathed the blade to Stannis on Dragonstone, Davos said. Thurs of Mayer had a flaming sword. It didn't help him much, and the true Lightbringer was not given. It was forged in 100 days and 100 nights, and Azor Ahai killed his wife to temper the blade. How could such a weapon just be handed over? Jon said. The Red Woman thrust the blade through the breast of a mother statue. The sword had jade-green flames and shimmers yellow, red, and white. If everyone could make a flaming sword by sticking it in a statue, we would have a lot more flaming swords, Jon quipped. What does Stannis want with House Stark? I will not bend the knee, Robb said. Safe passage to the wall, Davos said. If he wants to take the black for killing Renly, he is welcome, Robb replied dryly. He does not plan to join the Night's Watch. He wants to defend the Seven Kingdoms against the others. And for that, he needs passage for his knights and men, and supplies at the wall. Jon wondered how many men Stannis actually had. The Night's Watch, with less than 1,000 men and under 200 horses, had difficulty feeding themselves. Even if the army at Dragonstone was small, Stannis would have a few thousand men. It was near impossible to forage at the wall. This doesn't make much sense. What do you mean? Robb said. Stannis rebelled to seize the Iron Throne. Sailing 2,000 miles north will not help him. He does not have enough troops to attack King's Landing, and he cannot feed himself in the north without your help. It is a poor plan by a man who should be a better planner, Jon said. Melisandre says the true war is up north, that Stannis must unite the Seven Realms against the real threat of the dead, Davos said. How? Stannis does not unite anyone. He killed his brother instead. Who in the Seven Kingdoms will follow him? If a few thousand men could stop this army of the dead, then it is not much of a threat. And if the great others are some vast army, then Stannis will not be enough. Flaming sword or not, Jon said. Sir Davos, you say that Stannis wants to unite the realms. What has he done? He squatted at Dragonstone, burning statues of the gods. Rhodes said. We have tried to advise him. Maester Crescent suggested sending a raven to the Vale, offering Shireen as a wife to Robert Arryn. Peace might be made with the Lannisters to fight against the others. Stannis even sought out the Iron Bank to see if they would lend gold to hire sellswords. Joffrey will piss on your offers of peace, Robb said. And the Iron Bank lends where they can make money, not to fight at the wall, Jon said. If the army of the dead comes, they will not stop at the wall. If the long night arrives, it is not important who sits on the Iron Throne. The only war that matters will be the one against the great other, Davos said. Stannis Baratheon will not win that. I will consider your request, Sir Davos. But until then, you will stay in the north, Robb said. As a prisoner, Davos said. Call it what you like. You will be treated better than you would at the Eyrie or the Red Keep. The Wolfwind was ready for departure, the last of the supplies loaded on the cog. Jon had seen the few plague victims at the mother house, and examined the body of a sailor who had just died. There was not much more to do regarding the epidemic. They would leave in the dead of night, sailing past the merchant ships in the harbor. Have you decided on what to do? Jon asked. I will meet with Stannis. I may not like him, but if a threat is coming, his troops will be useful, and the Red Woman may know more about the others. I will keep Davos under guard, so he will send a raven to Dragonstone only when I am ready. Rosier, this witch must be mad. An army of the dead, Wyman said. The witch has magic, that is certain. But whether she lies or deceives, who really knows? If there is a threat, I will know soon enough. If there isn't one, I will send Stannis back to Dragonstone. Southern armies do not fight well in the cold, Robb said. Lord Snow, Jurion approached. We have gathered all we could from the septas and herbalists. I have lists of all those who caught the illness, the symptoms and how many days they suffered. Pardon me, but you look rather familiar. Are you from the Westerlands? The Mainster of Newcastle asked. He was a fat, rose-cheeked man with a head of golden curls. I was born there, but I have lived in the Riverlands all my life, Jurion replied. And where are you sailing now? The Maester asked. We are going south. That is all you need to know, Jon said, dismissing the Maester. Jerry joined the other Wintertown boys on the deck as Mature and Manderly prepared to cast off. You are right to be wary of the Omar. Masters are supposed to shed their loyalty when they don their chains. But the Omar was born a Lannister of Lannisport and claims some distant kinship with the Lannisters of Casterly Rock. Wyman said, Why do you have a maester that you do not trust? Jon asked. Master are assigned to castles. We cannot even get rid of the Namor, even if we wish to. Who else would handle our ravens? The Fat Lord replied, Jon thought that was silly. There was no reason that only the Citadel should train scholars and healers. Half the Wintertown boys knew enough to earn a black iron link for ravenry. Thank you for your hospitality, Lord Wyman. Good luck, Snow, Robb said, embracing his brother. Come back safely, and make sure Arya returns with you. The wolves will guard us, Arya said. Nymeria and Ghost prowled behind them. Valyrian was already on the ship. Good luck, Stark. Take care of the north. Jon boarded the Wolfwind. The Raven flew low under the clouds, under dark skies and intermittent rain, hugging the southern shore of the Bay of Crabs. The northern side of the bay was more crowded, with Gulltown and Wickenden in the Vale of Arryn. On the south, Crackclaw Point was full of hills and valleys, an inhospitable place covered by fog and thick trees and dotted with ruined moss-covered castles. Before the Targaryens came, the men of Crackclaw Point had been quarrelsome and unruly, either battling would-be conquerors or feuding with each other. But in the conquest, they surrendered quickly and honorably to Visenya, Aegon, and Rhaenys. This was a good land for dragons. The settlements increased on the road to Maidenpool. The Raven could see the pink stone walls now through a thick patch of soldier pines. The castle sat on top of a hill, overlooking a busy harbor. Streams and springs flowed into the town, and the taverns and inns were busy with men and horses. The Raven swooped closer. He saw shields adorned with 2 golden roses, the personal coat of arms of Garland Tyrell. There were other sigils present, 3 green leaves of House Oakhart, the red and green apples of the Fossleways and the burning white watchtower of the High Towers. Then he saw one more banner and smiled. In the cabin of the Wolfwind, Jon blinked, the irises of his eyes fading back to gray from the pale milk white. Ghost nuzzled against him, and Balerion guarded the door. He called out to his sister, practicing her water dance in the shadows. Arya, gather the others. The captain, the hound, and a few of the Wintertown boys entered the room. Arya shut the door, leaving Nymeria pacing outside. It was already a tight fit. The Tyrells have taken Maidenpool, Jon announced. No one questioned the declaration or asked how he knew. When will the ship arrive at the docks? If the winds are good, early tomorrow morning, the captain said. The trip south had been without incident. The winds had been fair and the sea calm, with the waves flowing in the heading of the ship. That had saved a day. Are the boxes ready? Yes, my lord. 4. Do we need to make more? Chet said. No, tell everyone on board to get some food and rest. Things will be busier once we dock. The other men left, led by Captain Maturin. Nymeria bounded in, plopping herself next to Ghost. The 2 dire wolves took up an enormous amount of space, much to the annoyance of Bobrian. Arya hesitated on her way out. Are you sure that the Lannisters are not waiting at Maidenpool? I warged into the Raven. I saw Tyrell sigils in the inns and taverns. His sister bit her lip. We were supposed to go back to Winterfell in a ship, the Wind Witch. But after Father was arrested, I saw the galley at the wharf with Stark colors. But when I got closer, there were no guards from Winterfell. It was a trap set by Joffrey. Someone more clever than Joffrey thought of that ruse. Among the banners at Maidenpool, there was also a son pierced by a spear. The Martells, what are they doing here? Arya asked. I don't know, but after we gave them Amarylorch and the Mountain's Head, I doubt Oberyn and his daughters will hand us over to the Lannisters. But the Martells might have their own schemes, and the Tyrells too, Arya said. No doubt they do, but they are unlikely to kill us when we land or give us to the Iron Throne. Garland needs us to cure his wife. Solve that, and then we can deal with anything else, Jon said. The sky was gray and overcast when the pink stone walls of Maidenpool came into view. Even with the plague and the presence of the Tyrells, life went on. They passed by fisher folk casting nets from their leather coracles and small folk digging for clams. There were ships that boldly announced their presence with sigils painted on their sails, the Kraken of the Greyjoys and the Stags of the Royal Fleet. The Wolfwind had no such aspirations. No eyes turned at an unmarked merchant ship. This close, Jon had no need for ravens. The mist only partly obscured the pier and buildings on the waterfront. In a few hours, the sun would burn off the morning haze, but the dim shapes of warriors and horses were easy to spot. The dire wolves sniffed the air, and the guards made a wall around Jon and Arya. Balerion prowled about restlessly as Captain Maturin eased the cog into the dock with the stern rudder. Hawsers were thrown over the sides, and sailors began to tie the ship down. A middle-aged man approached, his face ruddy from years outdoors. He wore no armor or shield, and carried a wax tablet, a dagger remaining in his belt. Several Tyrell guards followed in his wake. Ahoy! What ship is this? The Wolf Wind. We come from the north, the Manderley captain said. The north? The man's eyes widened at the sight of two massive dire wolves on the deck. Jon stepped forward to the shock of the harbor master and the reachman. I am Jon Snow. Tell Sir Garland that I have come. Maidenpool was a busy and prosperous town, reveling Duskendel as a center of trade. Ships did not come for the Sweetwater bathhouse, made famous by a song of Florian and Jonquil. Merchants preferred the well-maintained network of roads. 2 roads led south, one directly to Duskendel and King's Landing, the other meandering about the coast of Cracklaw Point and down Blackwater Bay. The 3rd road was the shortest and allowed wagons and caravans to meet the King's Road, east of Herrontown. There was a more prosaic reason the town was popular with sailors and seafarers. House Mouton turned a blind eye to smuggling. Maidenpool had not seen much damage in the fighting. Lord Mouton's red salmon still flew above the castle on the hill, and the walls and gates were manned by guards, albeit men loyal to the Roses. The Northern Army never ranged this far east, and the Lannisters extracted plunder and provisions, but did not burn down the shops and homes. Neither did the Tyrells. Jon wondered how Garlon had taken the town. There were no streaks of dried reddish-brown on the streets, or telltale marks of arrows and fire on the walls. Probably subterfuge, Jon thought. That was how he would have done it, rather than a bloody siege. Gawkers turned out to watch the unloading of the Wolf Wind. Chet and half of his crew stayed behind to make sure the barrels and crates were handled with care. Shouting instructions to dockhands twice their size, Jon released Jerian with the other half, particularly the quick and nimble little birds, to scout the town. He sent the Lightning Lord, Thoros, and the Brotherhood men with them, although the Reachmen vouched for their safety. Nymeria led Ghost into the hills to hunt, while Arya waited with him near the docks. Jon Snow, a voice cried loudly from a large pack of approaching men. The speaker for the group had a smile on his friendly square face, and was flanked by knights with red and green apples. Owen Fossaway, how is your head? Owen rolled his eyes. Fine. Luckily my head is quite hard. He extended his right arm to introduce the others. A few masters from the Reach, Bolibar and Franken, herbalists and wood witches, septus and midwives, and some others from the Citadel. Good to see you again, Jon. A handsome brown-haired man said. He wore a silver pin with the high tower. Alan, Jon said, surprised. What are you doing here? I was at Tumbler's Falls with my cousins. The plague has struck many towns on the Rose Road. When Owen called for assistance, I got permission from my uncle to come. And I came from King's Landing, Alaras said, with a faint smile as she emerged from the crowd. Lord Snow, the gangly knight, wore a sigil of red ants on a yellow field. Sir Garland is waiting for you. He is at the stone bathhouse with Lady Lyanna. You look familiar, sir. What is your name? The young man flushed, Sir Ambrose. I was Galen's squire at the God's Eye, and your captive after the battle until the twins. What happened to House Mouton? When was Maidenpool taken? The army arrived 4 days ago. Sir Garland went ahead to Maidenpool with a small force of knights. When our main host appeared, we ensured that the gates were open. The town fell quickly. Sir Garland threatened to batter down the castle, and Lord William surrendered. He is locked up in a tower with his 2 sons to await your justice. What about the Lannisters, or the Iron Throne? Jon asked. The plague ravages King's Landing. Sir Garland only told a few of his commanders of the destination. We have posted lookouts on the roads. If the Lannisters come, we will fight. Jon wondered if it would come to open conflict. If the army arrived 4 days ago, that meant the Reachmen had marched as soon as the Raven from Winterfell came. Jon had no doubt that whatever the state of King's Landing, the Lannisters would know of the departure of the Tyrell forces. Still, that was Garland's problem. There wasn't much Jon could do about that. The crowd parted for 2 enormous guards in gilded half-helms and green cloaks edged in satin. Both men had the same face, strong-jawed, blue-eyed, and thick mustache. The 7-footers towered over everyone, even the Hound and Brienne, and made room for a small wrinkled woman. What is taking so long? Why are you dawdling, Snow? Lady Olenna, Sir Ambrose is telling me how Maidenpool was taken. I want to be certain the town is secure from the Lannisters. If we all catch the plague and die, our safety won't matter. The Queen of Thorns looked up at Jon and then cast a thoughtful gaze over the growing pile of boxes and crates. Let's see it, Snow. How do you expect to cure Lady Lynette? I don't know, Jon replied curtly. That is my equipment. Olenna's eyes turned chilly. You don't know? You sailed 1,000 miles into enemy lands, and you don't know. Of course I don't know. This is the plague. It hasn't been cured before. If it had, you would have no need of me. I have thoughts and ideas, but it is impossible to guarantee victory. Garland says that you are very clever. I can't decide whether you are half mad or a fool. I did not come south to trade quips or bandy words, my lady. Do you want me to cure the plague? Then let me do so, Jon retorted. Where is Sir Garland? I am here, Snow. The Tyrell knight came with a large group of retainers and nobles. Jon saw many familiar faces, including Sir Baelor Hightower and the Red Viper. The crowd at the wharf had grown substantially, with small folk from the docks watching nervously. The Brotherhood men returned with the little birds, and one of them handed Jon a few handwritten notes. Chet finished the unloading of the boat, and the Wintertown boys assembled close to their leader. I need 3 things to treat the disease. How many plague victims are there at Maidenpool? Besides Lady Lynette, only a handful. Lord Mudan ordered that anyone without the plague be driven out of the town. Garland answered. I need more patience to understand how to treat the disease. That will only happen if I see many people who are ill, and not just Lynette. My lord, there are sick children and women at salt pans. Families seek refuge and healing at the Quiet Isle, and there are stories of outbreaks in the lands around Harrenhal. An old midwife said, Jon, there are plague victims at Tumbler's Falls, but they may be too sick to transport easily. And such a trip could alert the Lannisters in King's Landing, Axeline Hightower said. Bring me as many sick people as you can. I need more cases. Jon turned to the maesters, septas, and acolytes. How many patients have you seen? Who here has treated the plague? All the hands rose among the healers. It is a terrible sight in King's Landing. Hundreds die every day, and that is just what we see. I have examined children who die and then their weeping mothers follow a few days later. Sometimes the pestilence is so contagious that a man seems to catch it only by walking past a sick man on the streets. Other times, a dying husband does not spread it to his wife. Truthfully, we do not know and can do little of value. A pink round-faced maester said, You can do something now. The Wintertown crew will take down your words. For every man, woman, and child that died, I want to know where they became sick. What were the symptoms? How did they suffer? And if they spread it to their family and friends. I want an accurate record of when they caught the plague to their death, Jon said. That will be a great many people, and quite a lot of details to recall. It could take many hours, even days. A plump man with red hair said, What else do you have to do? You are healers, correct? You want to help cure the epidemic? Then give me a record of what has happened. Jon said brusquely, I need one last thing. Find me a pig. A pig? What do you want with that, Snow? Lena asked. To kill it, Jon said. The butcher handed over the freshly killed hog, paid for with 6 silver stags. With an axe, the hound quartered the beast into 4 roughly equal pieces. Chet hung the carcass over the water, blood dripping down. Several boys shooed away buzzing flies, and the black shapes of fish could be seen swimming under the red rain. Jon took out 4 wooden boxes, each the size of a small chest for the valuables on ships. Each box was a rectangle with 4 walls and a removable lid. On the sides and the top, hundreds of sewing needle-sized holes had been punched through. A lattice that allowed light and air, but not flies, to pass. He examined the insides carefully for any detritus. Satisfied, Jon nodded to the Wintertown boys. The quarters were placed in the 4 boxes and rope tied around all sides. Where should they be hung? The question was directed to the boys and girls who had roamed Maidenpool under the protection of Lord Beric and his men. Jonquil's pool is an obvious choice, and Florian's tower that overlooks the bathhouse. The sept in the castle is a possibility, and perhaps the harbor, Jerry said. What about the shops, milord? There is open space in the town center, a boy said. Jon considered for a moment before shaking his head. There's a small commons with grass, but animals are kept there before the knacker slaughters them. The closest tavern is the Stinking Goose. That does not sound promising. The Fool's Gate would be better. Groups of 3 or 4 boys picked up the now full boxes and carried them to their destinations in the town. Others boys and girls began to take out parchment and quills so that the recording of the cases could begin. Jon ignored the puzzled faces in the crowd. "Take me to Lady Lyanna. I will answer questions later." Something odd was in the winds, and it was not the usual stench, or the sight of bodies left on the streets. Men dying in King's Landing was a normal occurrence. What was strange was the lassitude that had fallen over the city. Tyrion waited eagerly for the Iron Bank to strike. But Baelish still walked about the Red Keep with his constant smirk. The Lannisters watched for any sign of change to Lord Tywin's condition. As usual, his father did nothing to satisfy his children's desires, neither recovering nor getting worse. The city was quiet. The Septons, the shopkeepers, the city watch, the highborn, all of them were hiding, hoping the plague would pass. "No trace," Bronn announced. "I rode west on the Gold Road until the bend in the Blackwater. Then I went to Rosie and Duskendale. No one has seen them. The sellsword had just returned." "Did you look south in the King's Wood?" Tyrion asked. "What the fuck would the Table Army be doing there? Do you think the Knight of Pansies needs thousands of soldiers for hunting a stag or a boar?" Bronn said, annoyed. "Lucio Tyrell is the Knight of Pansies, and still at the Red Keep, guarding my nephews. Garland is more dangerous. The second son left with the greater part of the Reach forces over a week ago. If anyone knew where, they did not say. The loss of Varys had rendered the Iron Throne blind, Lord Tyrion." The maester who attended his father entered the room, his face flushed with concern. "What is it, Belden?" Tyrion thought for a moment that Lord Tywin had succumbed. Not so long ago, he would have cheered that outcome. But if father died, the knives would come out. Sweet Joffrey would be much harder to control. Belden took an opened letter out of his robe. Tyrion raised an eyebrow at the roaring gold lion, rampant on a field of crimson. The message was meant only for the Lord of House Lannister. "You are very bold." "The last man who read my father's ravens without permission had his tongue torn out with hot pincers. He may still be alive in the dungeons of Casterly Rock." "I didn't open it, my lord. The raven had been untouched for a week in your father's solar. I saw the maester from the Eyrie looking through the papers. Colin ran away when I confronted him," Belden squawked. "Must forget anything about this?" Tyrion said sternly. He put aside his anger at Littlefinger's boldness to consider the note after Belden and Bronn left. The raven hailed from the master for House Manderly. Tyrion dimly remembered the man. A fat windbag, eager to flaunt his knowledge and his father's spy in the north. Tyrion skimmed through the message. Robb Stark and Jon Snow seen investigating the plague. White Harbor relatively untouched. Snow planned a trip south, but Tatamor did not know why or where. There was a young boy with Snow who looked like a Lannister. Tyrion stopped reading. Looked like a Lannister. Golden hair and green eyes were rare, especially the north. Jurian, but where was Snow going? And Baelish's man had read this note. What did that mean? A sharp rap on the door broke his train of thought. Tyrion palmed the letter as his brother walked through. An urgent meeting. Cersei has news about the Reach. Cersei's spy was not the lumpy-nosed, ginger-haired Orton Merryweather, but the Lord of Longtable's far prettier wife. Taena of Mere was an exotic beauty with olive skin, huge dark eyes, thick black hair, and sultry red lips. Tyrion was not contemplating her large teats or long legs. He wondered why she was the informant and not her husband. Was she really operating without Lord Orton's knowledge? Or was this a clever ploy to play both sides in the struggle for power between the Roses and Lions? The Marish woman claimed that she only wished to serve Cersei, but Tyrion doubted that his sister could command such loyalty from a stranger. Your Grace, Lady Losenet fell ill from the plague. Sir Garlon was mad with worry, so he asked Jon Snow to treat her. Garlon marched away from King's Landing with his men to meet Master Snow. Lady Merryweather said in a seductive voice, that explained the departure of the Reachmen. Could Snow really cure the plague? That would be shocking. But this also meant his son was coming south into plague-infested lands. Was Tisha with them? They would both be safer up north. Traitors! All of them, Joffrey raved. Where is Snow? I will make him beg for mercy before I chop off his head and mount it on the walls of the Red Keep. Your Grace, I do not know. Garland did not tell anyone before he left the city. Taena said. Joffrey slammed his hand hard on the table in fury. Cersei tried to calm him, but the boy king would not be soothed. Where are the Tyrells? Seize them and put them to the question. Sweetling, we cannot jeopardize our alliance with the Reach. Arrest Garland if you will. No, mother. I am the king. Find Lord Mace and throw him into the black cells. He will know where Snow went, or else I will take his head. Joffrey yelled. Tyrion was glad that the Tyrells were out of the Red Keep. Well, not Sir Loras. He was guarding Tommen. Arresting Loras would be just as bad as imprisoning Mace. The Knight of Flowers might be a third son, but he was famous for his chivalry and adored by his family. Loras was also an excellent swordsman. If accused of treason, he would demand trial by combat. That could turn into a true fiasco. History shows that the killing of a Lord Paramount is dangerous for the Iron Throne. Ned Stark's death cost our house dearly, Uncle Kevin said. Ned Stark was a traitor and a liar, Joffrey sneered. Whether he was or not, his life could have brought peace with the North. We don't have the men to fight the Reach, Kevin said bluntly. If you seize Mage Tyrell, then Sir Garland may march on King's Landing. It would not be hard for him to gather allies against us. There must be some way to track an army of 5,000 men, Cersei said. There is. A smiling Petter Baelish entered the chamber and bowed to Joffrey. Your Grace, I have discovered where your enemies are gathered. And how did you do that? Do you have spies among the Reach? Tyrion asked. I have my ways, men have needs, and soldiers are men. One of my whores joined the camp followers of the Tyrell army. Sir Garland marched to Maidenpool a week ago. That is where you will find Snow. Only a day had passed since the Wolf Wind had docked. In an ideal world, Jon would have waited several days, but circumstances were rarely ideal. He had examined Nymeria and Lyanna. Time was running out for the two ladies, and especially Lyanna's child. The rest of the plague victims in Maidenpool were fading even more quickly. One expired yesterday evening, and a few others would not survive much longer. When are you going to do something, Snow? Olenna asked. The lady was not known for her patience. The Queen of Thorns sat at the entrance of the stone bathhouse. The Septus were looking after Lyanna just as the Sand Snakes took care of Nymeria inside. Sandor Clegane took down the wooden box, hanging from a tree branch over a freshwater stream. Chet and Jurian came back with the chest from the tower. A few other boys wheeled the remaining 2 boxes. We are ready now. Jon knelt down and began to cut off the rope. Ready for what? Are you planning to roast the pig for a feast? Olenna said. He ignored the jape. The ropes were untangled and the lids opened. A clean woolen blanket was placed down on the ground, and Jon scratched letters on the ground, marking the location where each chest had been sequestered. As the Wintertown boys crowded about, others also began to gather. Alaris and her father, Ser Garland and Baelor, Owen and the other maesters. What are you doing, Snow? The Red Viper asked. Determining where to put the hospital, Jon said. Hospital? What is that? Garland asked. A center to heal the sick and perform surgeries. A place to take care of the ill, where the poor, the weak, the old, and children will not be turned away. Like the houses of healing in Esso, Owen said. Yes, like those, but not affiliated with the gods. We mean to cure physical ills, not spiritual ones. Why not just use Jonquil's pool in the bathhouse? These waters are supposed to be blessed with healing powers, Lady Olenna said. Where is the proof? What did Jonquil or Florian the Fool know about healing? Old wives' tales about magical springs are no basis for medicine, Jon replied. This is a far better test. The quarters of the hog were taken out and placed on the wool cloth. Each piece showed different colors and stages of spoilage. The meat hanging near the boathouse had a tangy, putrid odor and showed discoloring in several spots. The hog quarter from Florian's gate near the harbor had turned brown and slimy, while the piece near the sept had a sticky sheen and a pungent aroma. Only one quarter remained pink and fresh, with no discernible smell. Florian's tower. The carcass there shows no putrefaction, Jon announced. But how? Why are they so different, Jon? Owen asked as the maesters and acolytes examined the 4 pieces of meat. I have ideas, but not enough yet to be certain. I do know this. Your sister will have a better chance of recovering where there is less rot. That means the tower and not Jonquil's pool. Jon called out to the crew of children. Transport the patients. We need water, wood, candles, sheets, and food. Light the fires and boil water in cauldrons to wash the sheets. Get clean straw and down for the bedding, and bring all of my equipment. There is a great deal to be done. Now we begin. Jon walked to the tower, away from the awestruck crowd. The red comet had departed from the skies. When Barristan was tasked by Magister Illyrio to find and bring Daenerys Targaryen back to Pentos, he followed the bleeding star east to Slaver's Bay and Cart. The comet had led to her, a girl already a queen, with a Khalasar and 3 young dragons. Barristan had feared that she had the taint of madness in her blood. To his relief, he found that she was more Rhaegar's sister than Aerys's daughter, and yet he had served 3 kings. Jangaris II was a good man, but died too young. Barristan had only been a White Cloak for 2 years before the king's delicate health failed. Rhaegar showed initial promise, but descended into madness, driven by miscarriages and the deaths of his infant children. The defiance of Duskendale shattered what little sanity Aerys had left. As for Robert, he was a sot and a whoremonger, a good warrior, but a terrible king. Rhaegar would have been better than all of them, but the prince had his own eccentricities, an obsession with visions and prophecies. His sister was the same, but then those dreams had given her dragons. Barristan did not understand the magic of old Valyria. He only prayed that Daenerys did. His thoughts went back to the night before he left Meereen. The queen summoned him to her audience chamber, the obsidian candle cradled in her slender hands. As he knelt, he could not see whether the stub was smaller. Sir Rhaegar Aston, I need an able man to go to Westeros. My queen, I am at your service. There is a town on a hill with a harbor. There are springs that feed into a sweet water pool surrounded by a great stone bathhouse. Maidenpool? But what does the town hold besides Jonquil's pool? Salvation, a candle against the darkness that casts shadows far and wide. A light that burns twice as bright, burns half as long. And this light is so very, very bright. Your Grace, I do not understand. Go to Maidenpool. What you find there will save Meereen. The queen examined the Valyrian candle, her violet eyes lost in contemplation. Sir Barristan took that as a dismissal. He stood up to leave the chamber and pack for the long trip. He came to Daenerys as Arstan Whitebeard, and he left Daenerys under the same name. This time, no red comet would light the way. The Sea Shrike had a difficult journey. As it winded the way to Westeros, the plague had ripped through the free cities, bringing great fear and suffering. Stories spread of death ships, full of corpses and a few sailors clinging to life covered with oozing black boils. At Volantis, Barristan saw a ship burning at the docks, with tiger-striped slave soldiers keeping the weakened crew on board with long spears. On the orange shore, bodies washed up from shallow graves into the summer sea. The island city of Lys was closed, the port blockaded by the Magisters. Tyros and Pentos were not much better, but at least the cog was allowed to take on water and trade salt and copper for barrels of salt pork and fish. From Pentos, the ships sailed north and west across the narrow sea. Barristan had been to Maidenpool many, many years ago as a guest of honor. Miles Moten had been squire to the crown prince, and after receiving his knighthood, remained one of Rhaegar's close companions and staunch allies. Sarah Miles died in the rebellion, killed by Robert Baratheon in battle. Sarah Miles was bold as brass, a dragon man to the very end. His brother, Lord William, was made of weaker stuff and bent the knee after the war. The sun was high in the sky when the cabin boy trimming the sails caught sight of pink stone walls. 4 galleys and a cog were docked in port, and a dozen more fishing boats with the morning catch. The first sign of something wrong was the fish market. A score of soldiers patrolled the area, reinforced by archers and crossbowmen on the town walls. Below the walls there were many horses and pavilions, but he was too far away to see the sigils. A group of armed men met the Sea Shrike at the wharf. 4 stood back. The spikes of their halberds pointed to the sky. Another 4 carried swords and shields and followed a knight wearing a sigil of a red apple on a gold field. Barristan wondered what a Fossaway of Cider Hall was doing in Maidenpool. What port do you hail from? The knight asked. Pintos Sir, Grolio, the captain, actually was a Pintoshi and had been dispatched with Barristan to bring back Daenerys. The kindly man was a good sailor who wished only to return to his wife, children, and grandchildren. And do you carry anyone with the plague? Grolio shook his head. We are healthy on board the Sea Shrike. We have only come to trade salt, wine, and spices. The ship really carried only salt and copper. The yellow wine was sour and tart, and the crates with pepper, ginger, and cloves were only half full. Bad luck. We hoped a galley from Essos would carry the plague. You hoped we would have the plague? Not I, the knight made a wry face. I want nothing to do with boils on my skin, or red spots on my neck, or hacking my life away, but my uncle and cousin think differently. They seek plague victims. Bring your entire crew and passengers before me. The captain nodded, and soon all the sailors gathered on the deck. The soldiers searched the cog quickly and efficiently, making sure there were no stragglers. The knight unrolled a scroll. By this decree, the sea shrike is forbidden to leave port. The sails will be struck and the anchor dropped. The ship will be tied to the docks with heavy rope. All sailors must disembark. No one can leave Maidenpool unless permission is granted. But we must return to Pentos. You have no right to keep us here. Rulio groused. The knight rolled his eyes in answer. Why has Lord Moodin given such an order? Arstan asked. Lord Moodin has nothing to do with this. He is locked up in the castle. Sir Garland controls Maidenpool. My uncle, Lord Fossaway, and many other reachmen guard the walls. We have thousands of men in the town. You would be well advised not to challenge this edict. But why? Why would the Reach care about a town in the Riverlands? Aston probed. The Reach does not give two shits about Maidenpool. We are here to defend Jon Snow. Jon Snow? The bastard of Winterfell? Arstan said. In Pentos, he had heard wild stories of the bloody struggle between the lions and the wolves. Fewer tales reached Meereen, but enough to know that the fighting had ended. The bloody wolf of the north. He came south to cure the plague. The problem with rule by fear was that some men were not easily frightened. The Lords of the Rock had always been able to resist the demands of kings more than other great families. His father claimed that was due to the power and might of the Lannisters. That might be true. But Tyrion thought there was a simpler solution: distance. True, the Rock was not as far as Winterfell or Sunspear, but 900 miles on the Gold Road was a long trip, particularly over rugged hills and mountains. Only dragons could really threaten the Lannister stronghold. Joffrey had none of those. I will not allow my forces to be used to start a war against the Reach. That would be a poor idea in the best of times. But with our army weakened and a plague ravaging King's Landing and Duskendale, it is beyond stupid. Attacking Sir Garland would entail enormous risk with very little benefit, Uncle Kevin said. Joffrey seethed at the firm declaration. Tyrion wondered if his nephew would forget that at least half the guards at the Red Keep were Lannister men, and that the 3 white cloaks in the chamber were all from the Westerlands. Sir Jaime, you will take command of the Lannister army, the bannermen from the Crown Lands, and whatever other forces can be mustered in King's Landing. Attack Maidenpool and bring me back Jon Snow's head. Jaime will do no such thing. The Lannister army reports to only one person, the head of House Lannister, your grandfather, Lord Tywin. Lord Tywin has fallen ill. He cannot command anyone. Joffrey replied to Sir Kevin. Yes, your grace. That means I command the Lannister army. I am regent for our house in my brother's absence. Not Jaime, who is Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Or Tyrion, who is Master of Coin. Or your mother, who is Queen. Tywin trusts me with looking after the well-being of House Lannister. He would certainly not agree with your ill-advised orders. Joffrey quivered with anger. Lord Basis, summon the Knights of the Vale. Send them to Maidenpool. Berlis raised his eyebrows in dismay. I am sorry, your grace, but calling the banners would take many weeks. The Vale of Arryn is full of brave and loyal men, but travel through the mountains of the moon is difficult for an army, as winter approaches. They would not answer your call anyway, Cavan said. Your lords do not like you. They are unhappy that Robert Arryn is your ward. Royce, Waynwood, Redfort, Hunter, these houses will not follow you into battle, and that is almost half the strength of the Vale. The Lord of the Vale's eyes glinted with a hint of anger. An unfortunate misunderstanding that I mean to correct. The Vale Highborn are a fractious bunch, but too slow-witted to rebel. I wish you could call your banners, Lord Baxley. Then I could see your skill at leading an army against Jon Snow, but I fear the outcome will not benefit the Iron Throne. Sir Kevin said. Before more fuel could be added to the fire, Cersei placed a hand on the king's arm. Sweetling, I will speak to your great uncle. Leave it to me. With an angry toss of his head, Joffrey left the room. Baelish at his side, the two white cloaks, Sir Lyle and Sir Robert, shook their heads but departed with the boy king, leaving Kevin with his two nephews and niece. "Are you mad, sir?" Cersei glared. "That is your king. I know who he is. My loyalty is to your father and House Lannister. You should thank me for not encouraging his foolish whims. Garland Tyrell has insulted the Iron Throne. He must be punished," Cersei said. "He sought the best possible healer to save his wife. I understand the sentiment, but do not condone the action," Kevin replied. "The Tyrells are not in open revolt. Punishing Garland is one thing. Getting into a war is another. Joffrey is reckless and thoughtless. No one would want to fight a battle during a plague. We have an army. What is the purpose of an army if you cannot use it against our enemies?" Cersei said, "Your words show that you know nothing about armies or war. Neither does your son." Kevin said, "House Lannister has an army. You do not. If Joffrey chooses to empty King's Landing of peasant levies from the Crownlands and gold cloaks, he will soon understand that knights fight better than rabble. How do you even know that Snow is in Maidenpool? What if he is not?" "What do you mean, uncle? Do you think Snow will not sail from the north?" Tyrion asked. "No. Garland would not do this without assurances. But what if Snow is not at Maidenpool? What if the Tyrell forces are at Harrentown or somewhere on the King's Road? What would happen if the Lannister army marches out of King's Landing?" "Snow could march to King's Landing. He could besiege the city," Jaime said. "Snow could do more than that. I was at the Twins." Suri Baylor brokered the deal personally with the North. The Hightower men are in the Riverlands, and the Rivermen are friends with the North. Jon Snow could have more than one army. Another force might attack from the north or south. We would be cut into pieces, Kevin said. "But uncle, would the Reach yield command to Jon Snow? Are they prepared to fight?" Lady Taena has no reason to lie to us. She seems convinced that Garland left to find a cure for his wife. So it is likely that Baelish' spy tells the truth about their location. Tyrion said, "I do not think Garland wants a war, since his sister is about to become queen. But that can change if Mace is thrown into the Black Cells. Snow traveled by boat. Maidenpool is a likely destination. But would you stake your life on that? Would you bet the entirety of the Lannister forces? If our soldiers in the Crownlands are routed, Joffrey will lose his head. The North has not forgotten that the king executed Ned Stark. You are too frightened of shadows, uncle." Cersei announced, "These are knights with flowers. The Lannister army is well trained and seasoned in war. Nothing great was achieved without danger. Losing men would be worth the price of capturing Snow." "Yes, you would think that," Kevin said with scorn. "You didn't care when you asked Lancel to spike King Robert's wine. And you didn't care when you threw my son out of your bed. Men's lives do not matter to Joffrey or you." The only sound in the room was Cersei's sputtering. Tyrion sneaked a look at his brother. Jaime was stone-faced and did not look at their uncle or sister. "Lies. These are lies," Cersei cried. "When I asked why he joined the faith, Lancel told me the truth. I guess he could never replace your brother in the yard or in your bed." Kevin stood up, his green eyes still hard. "Jaime, I will give you 20 Lannister guards if you go to Maidenpool. I assume you will not be stupid enough to start a war. And if Snow actually defeats the plague, find a way to bring a cure back to your father." Their uncle left, leaving the three siblings. "Sake, these are lies. Our cousin was only a loyal ally in court. He informed me of Robert's misdeeds," Cersei said. Jaime raised his head. "Lancel spoke to me as well. He told me about your affair. You rewarded him after he poisoned Robert. He made his confession before he caught the plague. I hope that means the Seven will have mercy on him." Their sister stormed off. Tyrion sighed and poured 2 very full goblets of Arbor Gold. His brother just stared at the table while Tyrion drank his wine and rambled. "Well, that went well. A fine kettle of fish. I suppose Kevin is too loyal to work against the Iron Throne, whatever his feelings about Cersei. The Joffrey will not forget this. I need a favor from you, Jaime." "Spare me the quips, Tyrion. I suppose I was the last one to know about Cersei," Jaime said. "No, that would be our Lord Father. I do need a favor." Tyrion reached again for the half-full bottle. "I have reason to believe that my son is at Maidenpool with Snow." "What? How?" Jaime said. "Never mind the how. Tyrion did not want Cersei or Tywin to hear any news of his wife and son. But if Jaime is there, I want you to make sure that he remains unharmed, that he is well treated by the Starks. I don't want my son to die from the plague. How do you expect me to do any of that? Do you think the Northerners will welcome me into their midst? I only saw Tyrion at Riverrun. I never spoke to him, Jaime argued. Wait, why don't you go to see the boy? You are his father. Tyrion downed another glass, because I am afraid there were other things to do in King's Landing. He needed to make certain Joffrey did not start a war, and that Baelish did not kill Tywin. He might have tossed those worries aside if he was certain the boy would accept him. I do not know what I will do at Maidenpool. If Snow sees me, he might imprison me again, and the boy does not even know you are alive. Is it better for Jaime to know he has a family that will never acknowledge him? Jaime complained. Tyrion stayed quiet, drowning his thoughts in the wine. His father had never acknowledged him either, while putting great hopes onto Jaime that were dashed once his brother put on a white cloak. He wondered how much of their faults were determined by Tywin's intractable will and the death of their lady mother. In the end, everything came back to family. In the Solar of Mecca's holdfast, Petyr Baelish waited patiently for Joffrey to finish the long rant. Baelish nodded his head at the right moments, and made sure to shower praise like every other fawning lackey. First, Joffrey recounted the many ways he would torture Jon Snow, crippling the hands and feet, ripping out the tongue, burning the eyes with hot irons, whips, and the rack. Joffrey knew many ways of inflicting pain. Next, the king railed against his uncles, his mother, and Lord Tywin for their failure at crushing the rebels. Joffrey was a child who longed to be a man, a willful, callow, and petulant man. Lastly, Joffrey declared that his father, King Robert, would have smashed the Northmen and taken the heads of Snow and Stark. No one was as blind as a king. An usurper might begin his reign as a reformer, but in a few years feasting, drinking, and whoring would turn any man into a great blustering oaf. Then again, Robert had always been an oaf, but at least had a few people willing to tell him the truth. Jon Arryn and Ned Stark. They were both dead thanks to Baelish. Joffrey had grown up coddled and surrounded by flatterers and fools. The young king was as unfamiliar with the truth from his advisors as he was with any sense of right or wrong. Rulers like that were easy to lead. Joffrey stopped. Petyr bowed his head, knowing the boy's love for gestures to satisfy his pride. Your Grace, Sir Kevin was insulting and ungrateful, but not entirely wrong. The Reach will post lookouts on the roads in the Crown lands. Garland, Tyrell, and Jon Snow will be aware of the Crown's movements long before your men can reach Maidenpool. What does it matter? Let them know that I am coming. They will tremble at my approach. Somehow Baelish doubted that. Your Grace, I have a better idea of how to attack Snow. Garland Tyrell is prepared for a battle of swords and spears. He is a knight and is trained for war. He expects to defend the walls and gates against an assault, but a small group could go up the King's Road and make it to Maidenpool, unwatched. So what? They would not be enough to kill Garland Tyrell's men. The king was dumb as a stump. You don't need to fight Garland now. Deal with the Tyrells later, Your Grace. But this is an opportunity to kill Jon Snow, away from the protection of the Starks. A few men can do what an army cannot. When I went to Bitterbridge, one of my retainers poisoned Rinsley with the Strangler. The same could happen at Maidenpool. Joffrey's eyes lit up with excitement. Oh, to see Sir Garland when Snow dies, and then his wife and child will die from the plague. He will know that the gods have punished him for disobeying his king. I wish I could be there myself to see it with my own eyes. I am happy to serve, Your Grace. I have a gift for you, Lord Gaxley. Kill him with this. Joffrey reached into a drawer and pulled out a crossbow embossed with the golden lion of House Lannister. The king had only recently received the Mirish weapon, designed with a lever instead of a crank to make reloading the bolts faster and easier. I intended to use poison. No, I want the bastard to know who ordered his death. Kill him with this crossbow or wildfire, Joffrey said. You will be greatly rewarded for this, Bosley. I will make you Hand of the King. Succeed, and you will be my most trusted advisor. Fail me, and you will be punished. He accepted the crossbow from the king. Petyr had never been skilled with weapons, but then he didn't need to be. Someone else would be the shooter. I will see your will done, Your Grace. Very good, Lord Baelish. Are you certain you can kill Snow? Joffrey asked. The brave Osieva sang. Valor Morghulis, all men must die. If anything in this life is certain, if history has taught us anything, it is that you can kill anyone. Sandor Clegane was right to grumble. Florian's tower was crowded and getting more so. Her brother was far too merciful. Arya thought a dozen small folk waited in the courtyard to be screened for any signs of the plague. Most of the villagers were fine, ill with minor ailments. They lingered more due to curiosity and the prospect of a full belly. Jon had declared that anyone with the plague would receive fair treatment and be fed, washed, clothed, and housed in the tower. Families of the sick were permitted to visit. In the grand hall, there were vats of peas pudding sprinkled with ham, a steaming fish stew with clams, mussels, and shrimp, and plentiful loaves of fresh bread. Lady Olenna commented that peasants would rush to get the plague given the bounty offered to the sick. That was only a jape, but the tower was busy with highborn, small folk, and healers. There were a dozen new plague patients, and more coming every day. Yesterday, an old dairy master-at-arms had ridden in with a young girl from Harroway. Word of Jon's presence must be spreading over the Riverlands. Arya knew. That made the issue of security even worse. There were so many new faces, knights, lords, acolytes, and families of the sick coming in and out of the tower that she hardly knew who was who. Jon worked in a large space behind curtains, and he would see patients rolled over by the Wintertown boys on a gurney. The Hound and Brienne guarded her brother's privacy, and sometimes were joined by the Lightning Lord. Lady Arya. She turned to see the shy smile of Edric Dane. Two women followed him. They looked nothing alike, but she knew they were half-sisters. Edric turned to Albara and Tyang Sand. "May I introduce Prince Oberyn's children?" Arya interrupted. "We have met. I saw the two of you with the Red Viper at the Royal Sept." The shorter one, with fair golden hair, laughed. "We hardly met. You were busy fleeing the wedding after Snow set the royal guards on fire." The taller one, dirty brown hair bound in a rat's tail, snarled. "We want to hear how the mountain died. You were there in the boat." "I was. My brother dumped a bucket of wildfire on his head and burnt him alive. The mountain died screaming." Obara frowned. "But Edric says that you are called the Mountain's Bane." The young Dane looked uncomfortable. "I heard the name from Harwin. He was recounting the tale during Lord Miekl and Lady Maed's wedding feast at Winterfell." "How would Harwin know? He never went to King's Landing." "Mountain's Bane is a dumb name. Harwin was a loyal Stark guard with a large mouth. Brian and Sandor faced the mountain. The Hound slew the horse when his brother galloped onto the boat. The mountain would have beaten both of them. I stabbed my sword through the backs of both of his knees. But even when he couldn't stand, Gregor Clegane was still fighting. My brother came back and finished him off, but all of us fought the monster. So did we in the Red Keep." Obara grunted. "My father stabbed him several times and we scored a few hits. But Clegane fled and jumped through a window." "He's dead now. Jon chopped his head off." Arya abruptly turned away, eyes following a young, distraught woman entering the hall. An Oakhart knight tried to stop the girl, but she pushed through to Olenna Tyrell. The Queen of Thorns shook her wizened head. "What are you looking for, Lady Ada?" Edric asked. She was too concerned to correct the use of the word lady. "There are too many strangers here. What if one of them attempts to hurt Jon?" Tirzier gave Obara a knowing look. "It is true, you cannot trust the Tyrells. They are always plotting, growing strong, more like growing under your feet." "I am more concerned that a stranger might be a spy for the Iron Throne," Arya replied. Obara scoffed. "Be careful around the Queen of Thorns. That one may look harmless, but she is a natural." "A natural what? Speak up, child." These old ears are almost deaf. Lady Olenna had made her way over, and gazed at the surprised sand snakes with distaste. Having quieted the two Dornish women, prompted the girl by her side. "Go on. This is Arya Stark. She can help you." The dark-haired lady in a salmon-red gown bowed deeply. She reminded Arya of Sansa, tall, graceful, and womanly. The only blemish was the clear worry in the brown eyes. "Lady Arya, I must speak with your brother. His guards refuse to allow me to see him." "What is your name?" "Eleanor Mouton." The guards gave way to Arya, although Clegane prevented Olenna's giants from entering. Her brother was hunched over a small brass plate, smaller than a human hand. Several brass and copper screws, other metal plates, and bits of glass rested on the table. "Jon," Arya's loud cry distracted his brother from his work. "Yes, sister." Her brother raised his head. The dark-haired girl went down on her knees. Lord Snow, spare my brothers and sister. Sir Garland says my family's punishment will be your decision. Jon blinked. You are the Mooten girl. I thought no harm has come to your family. My sister and I have been allowed to remain in our rooms, but my brothers are locked up with my father in the tower. They are only young boys. Whatever my father has done, Mainfried and Morgan have done nothing wrong. Lord Mooten committed treason. He broke his vows to the north when he joined the Lions. He swore allegiance to the Iron Throne before the Freys tried to kill my brother. Jon said he feared for his family. Lord Tywin threatened. Lord Taxlewen is not here. I am, Jon said, his gray eyes sharp and dark. Your father betrayed us. I won't take his head, but he can never again be the Lord of Maidenpool. Once I leave, he must go into exile. Manfred is not ready to lead our house. He has only 9 name days, and Morgan is the youngest. Eleanor said. Stand up, Jon thought for a moment. You will be regent until your brother comes of age. As for your siblings, I will not harm them, so long as House Mooten does not betray me. We would not dare, my lord, the girl stood. Your father did. Chet, how many ravens are in the castle? The Wintertown boy answered quickly. 53, Lord Snow. The maester swears that no letters were sent when the town was taken. The little birds are watching the rookery. If your family alerts Joffrey or the Lannisters to my presence, then your line will end. But I have no desire to punish children for their father's crimes. Your brothers must remain in the castle, but may leave the tower. So long as your family causes no trouble, then they will not be harmed. I am more interested in curing the plague than settling old debts. Those are my terms. Do not make me change them, Jon said. I understand, my lord. Thank you, Eleanor Mooten bowed deeply before scurrying off. Her brother returned again to the strange brass plate and the piles of glass. Some of the sheets were smaller than a fingertip. A large crowd had gathered, including Olenna, the Sand Snakes, and a number of maesters. Olaris and the Red Viper attended to Lady Neen. Chet ran in the room, out of breath, and placed a glass jar full of water on the table. Jon smiled at Arya. This will help us cure the plague. The jar of water or the brass plate, she asked. Neither. The glass. It was always about the glass. Jon handed over the brass tool to Arya. The apparatus was small and light, held easily by the bottom screw. 2 plates of brass, beaten thin and flat, were riveted together. A piece of glass, smaller than a human eye, was suspended between the plates. And right above a pin, secured by 2 screws, one pushed the pin up and down, the other from left to right. It was a strange and ingenious device, albeit puny, like needle compared to a 2-handed sword. What in the 7 hells is that thing? Lady Olenna asked. A near eye for seeing the world, the Marish Fara observes things that are in the sky like the 7 wanderers and the stars in the sky. This tool allows us to see the world. But how does that help us, Jon? Owen Fossaway asked. Many acolytes and healers came closer, attracted by the discussion. Jon poured a bit of the water out of the jar and secured the blob on a sheet to the pin. Arya took a look through the lens. She gasped in surprise. In the green streaks, there were small little creatures, odd things with multiple tails, strings of circles floating around, even plants that seemed to dance. What are those things? Jon shrugged. Tiny animals? But there is an invisible world here, hiding in plain sight. Oberyn pushed his way through. Let me see. Arya handed over the near eye to the Red Viper. He looked, then rubbed his eye, adjusted the screws, and looked again. The room was silent when the prince turned to Jon in wonder. It is true. There are things moving in the water. They are alive, and in only a tiny drop of water. Alaris took the brass tool from her father. The other acolytes from the citadel lined up for a turn. Jon, the hog quarters that you hung up. Some of them must have more of these tiny beasts infesting the air and skin. That's why some pieces decayed and rotted. Owen realized it is certainly possible. These animalcules are everywhere, on the skin, in the mouth. Lady Olenna barged in front of 2 other reachmen and took the near eye. This is all well and good, Snow. How does it help Lyanette? What does this have to do with the plague? I will show you. Jon took a small pin, held it in the flame of a candle, and then pricked his finger. A single drop of red landed on a small square of glass. He placed it on the near eye and handed it to the skeptical old woman. I see hundreds of little red circles. Not quite circles, more like tiny buttons. That is normal, healthy blood. but this is something else. Jon purified another pin in the fire and with great care scraped a bows near Nymeria Sand's shoulder. He deposited the red drop onto a glass sheet and then replaced the glass square pinned to the near eye. Now look. Oberyn Martell grabbed the apparatus from an outraged Lyanna. My apologies. I am eager to examine my daughter's blood. The Red Viper was quiet for a moment. He looked up again, his haste puzzled. There are the same red circles, but there is something else. There are tiny black rods next to the larger ovals. There are many of them moving about, like worms trying to eat. That is the plague, Jon said. Not a curse of the gods or a product of miasma. Those black rods carry the plague, bacteria that makes the patients in the tower sicken and die. But what can you do about it, Maester Snow? Ser Garland asked. Kill the bacterium, but that cannot be done without knowing more. Jaime had taken the greenest of his uncle's men. These were not hard-bitten, foul-mouthed soldiers, ready to loot and kill, but conscripts hoping to serve a few years, and then return back to their homes in the Westerlands. Some were fresh to the Lannister Red Cloak, having been trained after the fighting in the Riverlands. Others enlisted to travel the world outside their village, and were disappointed by the grime and treachery of King's Landing. Most of the 20 were more than happy to leave the plague-infested city. An unseasoned crew would be better for this mission. 20 men, even if each had the ferocity and skill of Arthur Dayne or Barristan the Bold, could not beat an army. Jaime also wanted to avoid spies. Many Red Cloaks at the Red Keep were beholden to Cersei. The rest belonged to his father or Patyr Baelish. Some might report to all three. Jaime wanted simple men who would not challenge his orders of going to the Riverlands to keep the peace. He had told none of them about Snow, the Plague, or Maidenpool. The last time Jane traveled on the King's Road, there were signs of war everywhere. Peasants fled to the hills or huddled in huts, abandoning fields to weeds and brambles. Foragers and Riggins roamed in large packs, and it was difficult to tell soldiers from deserters. Wolves ruled from twilight to twilight, and corpses of half-eaten horses were found at dawn. The small folk had returned. They were out in force, harvesting rye, oats, wheat, and barley with scythe and sickle. Children plucked apples and peaches from trees and picked strawberries, raspberries, and black currants from bushes. Jaime hoped for their sake that there would not be another war. Otherwise, the peasants would soon be parted from the fruits of their labor. On the third night, they stopped at Sopshorn at the border between the Riverlands and the Crownlands, and closer to Maidenpool than King's Landing. The Knight of Sopshorn was a tough old large man with 6 men-at-arms and 4 crossbowmen. Sobsor Roger Hogg grudgingly opened the gates, but gave them ample food and drink. I will tell Tyrak of your hospitality, Jaime said, after his men had settled for the night. It is our duty. We are sworn to House Hayford. Lady Ermesang is wedded to your cousin, although it is hardly the match we would hope for. Jarek will treat her well. How, sir, she is a babe, not even with one name day. Will he suckle her with his own teats? Lady Ermesang was the last of her line, her mother dying soon after the birth, and her father slain in the war. Lord Typsley moved swiftly to marry the infant girl to Tyrek, son of his late uncle Tyget. Even for his father, that was a brazen move. The other squires called Tyrek wet nurse. What news is there of the plague? Jaime asked. We had little of it, sir, until those crazy fools with whips came through town. Bloody idiots. Whip each other all you like, but don't do it on my lands. And then, when the plague truly broke out in King's Landing, those madmen came back up the King's Road. Sir Roger shook his grizzled head in dismay. I sealed up the gates and waited for them to leave. The small folk with any sense avoided them. The others died. And what of the Reachmen? Have they caused any trouble? Rosier shook his head. There are Hightower men. From here to Harrenhal, Fosseway knights on the King's Road, a few Oakheart and Ambrose soldiers riding east. The Reachmen keep the peace. The only group that caused a problem came by a night ago. Plague doctors, 2 wagons full of them with their strange masks, look like a bunch of human crows. That was strange. There might be sheep and pigs on these farms, but hardly silver or gold to tempt Becha's men. What were they doing? Probably spreading the plague. They asked to stay, and I refused. That was wise. I would not trust them, Jaime said. Cyril Rogers snorted. I wasn't born yesterday. We just want to gather the harvest, plant one more set of crops, and pray that autumn lasts. We want nothing to do with wolves and lions. Begging pardon, Sierra, but one of your father's bannermen attacked Assay's Horn and stole some goats and sheep. Their leader had a manticore on his shield. That would be Sir Amory Lork. My father commanded him to ravage the Riverlands, along with the mountain and the brave companions. We are in the Crownlands, Sierra. Your father's men should have known better, Roger said. Jaime was not sure if they did. Lorch was a vicious brute, and as dumb as a rock. Reading a map might have been beyond his meager abilities. Amory Lorch is dead now. He was at Harrenhal when the wolves took the castle. Snow crucified the sellswords and foragers. Good, the man was a cunt. He tried to burn down my tower. Sir Jaime, all we want is to survive the winter. We don't want to fight any more wars. His father would have chastised the old knight, saying that a vassal had a duty to serve his lord, but Jaime had seen Lady Hayford at King's Landing. The little girl needed a wet nurse to calm down after Snow blew up the royal scepter. Chacrack, at the tender age of 1 and 3, was only a squire and not ready for the brutal realities of war. Jaime hoped that his cousin would not have to call his banners. Otherwise, Lady Aramisane might be the youngest widow of Westeros. Her brother worked long into the night. Since the invention of the near eye, Jon spent his time hunched over the work area, using light from the sun or candles to shine through the lens in the brass sheets as he examined different samples. When he needed to rest his eyes, Jon would lie down, and the Wintertown boys would make their reports. Jon fired off a few questions and then returned to his desk, examining the patients and their blood. The cycle continued day after day in the race against time. Yaxel was one of only a dozen people who had spent more than a perfunctory amount of time gazing through the near eye. Tales of the animalcules had spread, with varying effects. The acolytes were eager and excited, inflamed by the possibilities of the unknown. 2 little birds drew illustrations of the plague bacterium and other miniature creatures, described to them in detail by Chet and Jerry. Others, including a few masters, were skeptical, doubting the discoveries and claiming that these strange organisms might only be a fever dream. They asked to examine the near eye to verify any discoveries. Jon told them politely to bugger off. Florian's tower had grown crowded. The elder brother of the Septon the Quiet Isle escorted plague victims to Maidenpool. 3 more ships were quarantined in the harbor, and some sailors had fallen ill. Small folk trickled in from Crackclaw Point and the lands north of Harrenhal. Jon did not turn anyone away, and the assembled healers worked hard at keeping patients alive. Still, no one had been cured. You cannot do such an impious action. The faith cannot accept blasphemy. The outraged speaker was a Septon from the Riverlands. A few others, including the burly elder brother and the silent sister, seemed less convinced. There is no choice. I need to understand more about the disease, Jon replied. Cadavers, bathed and covered by sheets, rested on several tables. What is going on? Arya asked quietly. Your brother wants to chop up some bodies. That idiot says he can't. Something about the 7-pointed star, the hound answered. The Septons believe that cutting up the dead means that the soul cannot enter the 7 heavens. The Holy Book says that a corpse must be whole and preserved, Brienne added. The North just fought a war in the Riverlands. Plenty of dead men with heads, arms, and legs chopped off. And that's before the vultures and crows ate their full, the hound said. The men from the Reach tried to reason with the angry Septon. The Hightower acolyte, Sarbattler's nephew, took the lead, defending Jon's actions to the priests. Holy brothers and sisters. But the mood in the hall had turned against her brother. Arya crept over, unseen by anyone but the one-eyed black tomcat. Jon, is it really necessary to dissect the bodies? Her brother turned to her with tired eyes. It is, sister. We cannot rely on guesses based on animals and birds. Cutting up the human body reveals the truth. The accounts of the plague do not agree. In some cases, men die on the same day. In others, they linger for weeks. I cannot cure a disease that I do not understand. Rosier remembered her lessons long ago with her dancing master. Before he had been slain by Meryn Trant, Syrio Forel told her how he had become the first sword of Brevias. Other men were stronger, faster, and younger. But Sirio's eyes were open. He saw things for what they were. The seeing, the true seeing, that is the heart of it. Yes, Jon looked at her gratefully. We can only learn by understanding. The deeper we go, the better our chances. We must see with our own eyes, and not the misconceptions of the past. That is what matters. Her brother had made up his mind. Perhaps an accord can be reached. The faith might allow some study of the body under certain guidelines we would need some time to consider. Aline Hightower suggested, "No, I have already waited too long. I will accept no conditions. I have work to do." Jon put on long black gloves that covered his arms up to the elbows. "Snow, the gods will curse you for desecrating bodies," a septon said. "If that is the price to be paid for knowledge, then so be it." Her brother walked away. The stinking goose lived up to half its name. There was no goose to be found, but the place stunk of wine, damp, and sweat. Garland Tyrell ordered every part of Maidenpool cleaned, but the worn-down tables, stools, and benches held the smell even after being washed in a trough. Despite the pervasive stench, bad wine, and worse food, the tavern was full of men drinking and talking. Men in their cups did not hold their tongues. That was why Sarah Barristan sat on a stool in the shadows, nursing a flagon of watered-down ale. "He is mad, that one, cutting up dead bodies. Seeing creatures in drops of water, thinking that he can cure the plague." A scrawny, sharp-faced old man slurred his words. "Stop with your blabber, nimble dick. Snow knows a great deal. Why else have none of us caught the plague? We are crowded in this town, but the only sick people are in the tower. I hear that everyone in Florian's tower washes with boiling water, that they clean their hands and faces with hot rags before and after they see the sick. Who needs so much washing? You need a good wash or a dunk in the bay. You stink, Dick?" "I saw some of Snow's boys out in the harbor. They was collecting some stuff," a tough veteran replied. A boy, perhaps a squire to some hedge knight, squeaked in fright. "Do you think it is sorcery, like what the wolves used at the God's Eye?" The old fighter snorted. "We got beat fair and square. Tyrell ran straight into a trap. Magic had nothing to do with that. Snow released us after the battle, and Sir Baelor and the other knights were allowed to go after the twins were sacked. Praying to trees and dancing around fires are not why the North won. They are good fighters and have better generals than we do." Barristan had heard many similar tales in the past days. The Reach in the north had fought a bloody battle, but few men sworn to Tyrell bore a grudge. Besides traitors and turncoats, the Starks had shown mercy to their enemies. That had bought them great respect from the Reachmen. He left the stinking goose for some fresh air. The walk along the pink stone walls was pleasant, as was the cool sea breeze coming from the bay in the early afternoon. Several children were at the harbor, knee-deep in water, gathering seaweed with nets during low tide. Barristan stopped in surprise at one of the boys. The face was framed by curled golden hair, emerald green eyes, and a playful smile. The boy was the spitting image of a young Jaime Lannister. Tyrion thought about taking more men. His sister certainly would. She would have announced her presence at the Tyrell manse with several hundred red cloaks and city watchmen. Cersei had never known subtlety. Tyrion was trying to stop a war, not start one. He mustered a small troop that included white cloaks, the Kenner of the Watch, and many of the chief knights in service of House Lannister. What they lacked in numbers, they made up in gravitas. The ponderous eyes of Mace Tyrell watched as Tyrion took a seat in the solar while Sarah Lyle and Sarah Robert stood outside. Yellery sat with her daughter as Marguerite embroidered golden flowers on green samite. The needlework was excellent, but then again, he expected no less of the Rose of Highgarden's skills at the womanly arts. "Lord Tyrell, where is Sir Garland?" Tyrion asked. Mace blinked twice before answering. "My son is outside King's Landing." "But where?" The Tyrell troops were camped not far from the city walls, and now they are gone. Tyrion probed. Then he realized that the Queen of Thorns was missing from the villa. "Is Lady Olenna with your son?" Sweat dripped down the matted brown hair and fat face into the salt and pepper beard. Mace opened his mouth, but the words were preempted by Marjorie. "Grandmother does what she likes. As for Garland, he did not tell us. Let us be frank, your brother has gone to meet Jon Snow. The White Wolf came to Maidenpool to cure Lyanna Fossaway of the plague," Tyrion said. The Rose of Highgarden opened her mouth in shock. This one was a good mummer, unlike her doltish father and elegant, but dull mother. "The Iron Throne knows, my lady, and it would be far better to deal honestly with me than my sister or my fool nephew. We knew my good sister was sick, but we did not know Garland's plans, and we do not know where he is. Now, my daughter speaks the truth," the latter said. "Whatever my son may have done, it was for his wife and child. It has nothing to do with Marguerite. Perhaps House Lannister needs assurances that our alliance remains strong and that your engagement to Joffrey is unbroken. Nothing has changed. We are loyal to the Iron Throne. Marguerite answered. Time to take the bull by the horns. Then your family will move back to the Maiden Vault. My lady, the Tyrells can show their loyalty by staying in the Red Keep. As your hostages, what will you do if we refuse? Marguerite asked. We will have no choice but to throw Sir Loras into the Black Cells. I do not blame your brother for seeking out care for his wife, but the Lannisters cannot allow the Tyrells to join the North. We may not be able to punish Gurlan, but Loras has no such protection. Loras had nothing to do with this, mates cried. Tyrion shrugged in response. Why are you here, Lord Tyrion? The Rose of Highgarden asked. I am trying to keep the peace, Lady Margaery. My sister's response would be far worse, and I do not trust Joffrey to handle any matters that require the slightest bit of sense. My nephew does not have a good temper. Your family will not be harmed at the Red Keep. Your guards will be allowed to attend you at the Maiden Vault, Tyrion said. That is not my question. Why are you here? Why not your father, the Lord Hand? He speaks for House Lannister, not you. Margaery replied, My father does not wish to leave the Red Keep. It was a half-lie. Can he leave the Red Keep? Lord Tywin has the plague, does he not? If he was not ill, the Hand would deal with House Tyrell. Not you. I will not speak for my father, just like you claim to not know of Sir Garland's plans. The point is still the same. If you reside in the Maiden Vault, our agreement is intact. The Iron Throne will know that the Reach is loyal, but if the Tyrells should abandon the alliance, the blame will fall on Sir Loras. We have seen how Joffrey deals with traitors. Tyrion said. He cut off Ned Stark's head. I will reside at the Red Keep. I am to be married to the king. But if any harm comes to Loras or myself, then my family will not forget. My brother Willis is at Highgarden, and my brother Garland is with our soldiers. Both are out of your reach. Tyrell swords keep Joffrey on the Iron Throne. The Lannisters had better not forget that. Tyrion nodded. His father and uncle would agree with that statement. But his sister and nephew were far more reckless. He wondered how long the peace would last. The candles were burning low when her brother emerged from behind the curtains. Jon stripped off the dirty black gloves and threw them into a fire. He washed his hands and face, dipping the linen into a cauldron of steaming water. He cleaned the near eye gently and wiped it dry before placing it next to the glass sheets. A plate of brown bread and hard cheese also rested on the table, along with a mug of wine. Her brother did not drink or eat. What have you discovered, Snow? The Red Viper called out from his daughter's side. Quite a bit. Enough to justify the ire of the faith. Lady Olenna asked. More than enough. Jon examined a sheaf of papers with numbers scribbled in columns. Will this help Lyanna? Garland Tyrell said. Her brother nodded. I know more now than I did before. The laws of nature are not uneasy to unravel, but understanding the small helps reveal the larger pieces of the pattern. And what does that mean? What are these laws? Olenna said. Jon turned his attention to the highborns in the chamber. He was amused at the impatience of the Queen of Thorns, but his focus was on the other acolytes and healers left in the room. Owen, Oleras, the elder brother, and many others awaited his words. I will explain as much as I can. At Winterfell, I realized that something did not make sense. In some tales of the plague, it took weeks to die. In others, death came in a day, even for those of strong body and mind. This is why I had the Wintertown boys take down the accounts of the suffering and the dead. Some victims spread it with great ease. Others lived with family, and yet no one else was afflicted, even after many days. The symptoms were different, the length of time, and the spread of the disease. And now, I know why. You found this out from the bodies of the dead? Owen asked. Jon nodded. The plague is not just one disease. It is three. It is the same bacterium, but it manifests quite differently. Jon walked amidst the patients. We are lucky that most patients at Maidenpool, including Lyanna and Nymeria, have the first bulbos. Their infection is in the swelling. The creatures that cause the disease have not spread from the bumps to the rest of their body. For these patients, the plague does not jump to their caretakers. The second case is the lungs. These are the ones who coughed blood and spread the disease easily. What are lungs, Snow? Darlin asked. Jon thumped a hand against his chest. Lungs are how we breathe. All animals have them. Those who catch the plague in the lungs die in 4 to 6 days, and the last type, plague the blood, is the deadliest. These ones show bleeding in the skin, fingers, and toes. They die only in 1 or 2 days. The blood is poisoned, and it flows about the body. Are you certain, Jon? Yaris asked. Nothing in this world is truly certain, and there is always more to learn, but I understand enough. Jon took out a glass disc, the size of his hand. A see-through gel of pale yellow and white filled the device. This idea is not mine. The Wintertown boys discovered this. The credit belongs to Jerry, Lord Snow, Chet said. Gary stepped forth. The Maester asked us how to keep the bacteria alive out of the body. We tried several plants until we hit upon algae and seaweed. After it is boiled and cooled, it forms a gel. The animalcules can grow in the gel. That way, they can stay alive. Why would you want plague animalcules to remain alive? Oberyn asked. So I can kill them. The dish allows me to isolate the bacteria and determine how it dies. But you do not know how to destroy these creatures, Olenna said impatiently. But I do. The light of the noon sun will kill them in only 1 hour. The heat of a fire also does the same. I suspect ice and cold would do the same. It dies in boiling water and without food. The gel or a human carrier. So the bacteria can be slain, Jon said. Not without harming the patient. Before a person falls ill, all those ways work. Washing with hot water, staying near a fire, going out into the sun. But once the plague is inside the body, you cannot use those ways. Olyr is realized. That means you cannot cure the plague. You can't boil Lyanna or expose her to the sun. You can't freeze her or burn her. Olenna said, I must agree. Oberyn added, You have done extraordinary things, Snow. You have seen things that no man has before. You have solved the mystery of this disease, perhaps all diseases. You are more deserving of the silver link than anyone I have ever met. But there is no cure. Not yet. There is no cure yet. The ink is not dry. I am not done. But Lyanna does not have many days left. The babe must come soon, Garland said. Then there is no time to waste. I will find the cure. I made a promise, and I will keep my word, whatever the cost. Jon turned back to his work. The guards at Maidenpool were pathetic. Baelish arrived 2 days ago, posing as a merchant from Duskendale. His men infiltrated the town in 3 different teams. Farmers driving a wagon loaded with wheat and corn, hedge knights looking for a lord, and begging brothers in robes of brown. 2 of those had entered Florian's tower, pretending to look for a sick holy sister. Baelish preferred to kill with poison. In a small leather satchel, he had a vial of the Tears of Lies, a dozen purple crystals of the Strangler, a jar of nightshade that could cause delirium and convulsions, and even poisonous mushrooms to be added to a porridge or soup. Unfortunately, Snow was not the sort of man who feasted with abandon. Servants watched over the bastard's food and drink like a hawk. The crossbow was less elegant than the Strangler. Lothar Brune had secured a room at the Old Plough Inn. The window overlooked the entrance to Florian's tower, and the stocky free rider was an excellent shot. The problem was that Snow never left his work. Baelish was thinking about the problem when he saw a familiar face from King's Landing. He chuckled. It was always easy to throw blame on Lannisters. His previous stay in Maidenpool lasted only a day, as the guest of Lord Moten in the castle. This time, Jaime slept on a dirt floor of the common room, with a heavy cloak as a blanket. That was better than a cell in the dungeon. None of the Reachmen recognized him. He had left the Lannister guards outside the town. Jaime borrowed a suit of plain gray armor from Sordiad Marbrand. His friend offered a squire and a dozen outriders, but he refused. Tayr's soldiers patrolled the walls, but few men at arms had seen the Kingsguard up close. Jaime had not crossed paths with Sir Garlan or the Queen of Thorns. He had even heard rumors that the Red Viper was also at Florian's tower. A slender man with a pointed gray beard accosted him outside Jonquil's pool. Jaime. Partir Baelish smirked. Not so loud, you fool. Jaime shoved the man into the shadows. What are you doing here? Carrying out the king's orders. And you, sir, why are you here? When he didn't answer, a broad smile broke out on the former Master of Coin's face. The Lannister boy? Who is he, sir? Jaime, You bastard! The Kingsguard is sworn not to wed nor father any children. And you are all so loyal to your vows, Vasily smirked. Then it is your brother's child. Lord Tyrion was married for a few weeks. How splendid! What do you want, Baelish? Jaime reached for his sword, eyes watching out for any guards. Killing a few Kettleblacks would be no trouble at all. Baelish held up his hands in mock surrender. Only to help. My men have seen the boy. I know where you can find him. Her brother had not slept for days, working himself to the bone in a desperate race against time. The pillows, furs, and blankets on the cot were unused, even though the little birds dutifully washed them every night and morning. A long table was littered with various metals and liquids, beakers and boxes, rows of glass dishes, and pages of carefully scribed results. Fires burned in censers, to their credit. The Wintertown boys and the acolytes supported Jon without question, as he tested different materials against the plague. What about sulfur? Olaras asked. Slows down, but doesn't kill the bacterium. I have tried it as powder blended with incense and mixed with other herbs. It is not strong enough. Alcohol? Owen said. That does kill animalcules, but it will also kill a patient. Purified alcohol is far more toxic than beer, ale, or wine. This will be injected directly into the body, so any poison will work swiftly, and plague carriers are already weak. Jon set down the near eye. I have tried iron, pyrolusite, silver, gold, nickel, copper, potash, tin, lead, mercury, arsenic, and antimony. I have made powders, ashes, and acids. I have even tested natural substances like snake venom. Either they are too weak or they are too strong. Nothing seems to work without harming the patient. Jon, you need to rest, or at least eat, Arya said. The tray of food had grown in size. The little birds had taken away the wine, but a pile of uneaten bread and cheese remained. Arya, I only have a little time left to solve this. Sleep and food can wait, Jon said. Lord Snow, what if we build a furnace? It would be much easier than burning all these metals and rocks and braziers and small fires. Ched asked. I don't think it is needed. If lead and tin do not work, I doubt an alloy of the two metals will. Suddenly a blur of gray burst through the door. The dire wolf stopped before her, the dark golden eyes gleaming with excitement. Nymeria, what's wrong? Arya asked. The wolf snorted and turned back toward the entrance. Something is bothering her. But where is Ghost? Why aren't the wolves together? Jon asked. Crozier rushed out so quickly that she did not hear her brother's concerns. She passed by the guards. The hound slammed down a tankard of ale, buckled on his sword and tried to follow. Brollian was a beat slower, but neither were quick enough. Even the red viper and the sand snakes would be hard-pressed to follow the running girl. The sun was setting when Arya exited Florian's tower, following the she-wolf a short distance to the edge of Jonquil's pool. The trail was clear, a basket of seaweed dripping on the grass, a discarded fishing net, and finally a blond boy struggling with a cloaked figure. Get away from him, Arya yelled. The man turned, only for the boy to kick his leg and scramble away. As the man cursed, the brown cowl slipped off, revealing golden locks and green eyes. Arya gasped in surprise. Go away, girl. This has nothing to do with you. The man reached again for the boy with one hand and hid his face with the other. Milady, he grabbed me as I came back from the harbor. Jerry dove to the ground. Kingslayer, Arya called, hands on both needle and Graham. Yozier Lannister drew his sword with remarkable quickness. He pivoted, holding the blade in both hands, moving with a fluidity that would make a water dancer proud. His eyes watched the dire wolf warily, but his body was relaxed, ready to attack or defend. Arya Stark, I don't want to harm you. Ymir won't let you, Arya cried as the she-wolf growled. I sparred with Barristan the Bold. I learned to fight from the White Bull and Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning. I am not afraid of a dire wolf, not even a monster like yours. What about two? Arya said. Ghost approached warily on the left flank, forcing the Kingslayer to divide his attention. Arya sensed her brother's gaze behind the red garnet eyes and knew that Jon was aware of Yomi's presence. The dire wolves only needed to prevent any escape before the Lannister knight would be surrounded and captured. Cecil Barristan was proud of his record as a tourney knight. He had been knighted by King Aegon V for feats of prowess as a mystery knight at the age of 16. As a member of the Kingsguard, he had participated in many contests, winning his fair share. He had been declared champion at Maidenpool, Old Town, and Storm's End. He had won several tourneys in King's Landing. In all those times, as he raised the lance in the joust or faced opponents in the melee, Barristan had never considered the downside of victory. He had become so well known that even disguised, he would be easy to recognize. It had been over 30 years since he won the tourney at Maidenpool. He doubted that anyone, except the imprisoned Lord Mutin, recalled his victory. But he had jousted with Sir Bialar and Prince Oberyn more recently, and unhorsed Sandor Clegane, only 2 years ago. Lady Olenna Tyrell was far too sharp to forget his face. If he entered Florian's tower, he would have only one chance to talk to Snow. For the 4th time in as many days, Barristan considered what to say when a great wolf dashed in front of him, bounding through the tower door. Barristan had seen the dire wolves at Winterfell. The 6 pups had been smaller than hunting hounds, playing in the Godswood with the Stark children. This creature was no pup. The gray dire wolf was massive, as tall as a small horse. At the Stinking Goose, he had heard stories of the wolves at war, how they ripped apart horses and terrified men. A moment later, the dire wolf burst through the door again. Rogier Stark followed after the beast, running swift as a deer. The hound and a tall woman in dented blue plate armor came next. Barristan put a hand on the pommel of his sword, wondering if he would be discovered. Sandor Clegane and the woman ignored him, intent on tracking down the girl and the wolf. Barristan wondered what had happened, if he performed a service for the Starks that might earn an audience with Jon Snow. But Lady Arya might not need any aid. With a dire wolf and the hound at her side, he decided not to follow, and was rewarded when the door opened again. A slender man with dark brown hair and a long face exited Florian's tower. He resembled Eddard Stark, but the gray eyes shone brighter, with the wildness and fierceness of the north. This must be Jon Snow, Barristan thought, on the trail of his sister. The knight was about to call out when a black cat, hissing and spitting, rushed from the shadows and lashed out with sharp claws. Snow stumbled in pain. The crossbow quarrel that might have skewered the chest thudded into the right shoulder instead. Snow fell on his side, drops of red dripping down the shaft and the feathered knock. The cat screeched, a shrill and almost human noise. Barristan rushed forward, but a second bolt flew through the air, piercing the left side. Blood leaked onto the cobblestones. The bolt had come from a window of a nearby inn. In one movement, Barristan drew a blade and crouched low over the fallen man. He heard a faint whistle of a third quarrel and slashed upwards, cutting through the shaft in mid-flight. Barristan kept his body between the shooter and Jon Snow. No more quarrels were fired. He was still standing there when guards poured out of the tower, and 2 enraged dire wolves rushed back with a distraught Arya Stark. "Wake up! Wake up!" His thoughts were blurred as if gray storm clouds obscured the sun. Before Nymeria appeared at the tower, Jon was focused on the plague. They had made progress, but the final step eluded him. Outbreaks of disease were shrouded in mystery. Fear of death led to panic, fervor, and hysteria as desperate men, women, and children struggled to come grips with an epidemic. They failed because people wanted complex explanations, superstitions, divine intervention, scapegoats. But the simple answer was almost always the best one. Jon had been careless with his security. He relied on Cersei Garland to secure Maidenpool and Sandor and Brienne to ward against any personal attack. The dire wolves roamed the hills near the town, their hearing and sense of smell acute enough to detect any large-scale threat. He had thought those precautions would be enough to ensure safety as he dealt with the plague. That was clearly wrong. When Arya followed Nymeria, Jon warged into Ghost, only to see the Kingslayer through the White Wolf's eyes. Jon left Florian's tower, intent on helping Arya apprehend the Jaime Lannister. That was when the 2 bolts had slammed into him. A simple but effective trap, and one that would have killed him, had it not been for the cat and the old man. "You look terrible." He had seen her often in dreams. A beautiful woman with dark curly brown hair in ringlets, olive skin, and deep indigo eyes. She was dressed in lilac and lace that, like the gowns of Dorne, both revealed and concealed her lush figure. "Rosieres, am I dead?" She rolled her eyes in gentle exasperation. "Are you in pain?" His shoulder and side burned. So did the right calf from a certain cat's claws. "It hurts badly." "Good. Pain means you are alive. The dead do not suffer. Not physically, at least." Take my hand, beloved. He floated upwards, fingers locked with his shadow lover, as they watched the wounded body from above. The eyes were closed, the breathing shallow and rapid, and the skin cold and clammy. The face was bruised where he fell. Ramses was right. He looked like shit. Jon had been placed on the now bare cot. The head and nock of one bolt had been hacked off, and the shaft pushed through the right shoulder. Thick bandages soaked with blood covered that area. The healers left the tip of the other quarrel on the left side. Had that barbed head been ripped out, he might have bled to death. Chet was applying honey and a salve of dittany wax and oil to staunch the blood flow. Other boys and girls prepared linens, crushed fresh herbs, and covered Jon's body with thick, clean blankets. The wound would need to be widened and probed carefully before a wire loop and feathers could be used to extract the bolt. "Did your cat have to claw me?" Jon groused. "Bjorn saved your life," Rosied in mock outrage. "You should thank him. He could have found another way to warn me." "And whose fault is that? Did you forget that you are a ward?" "My mind was on other things," Jon admitted. In Maidenpool, he had not spent much time with Valyrian, Ghost or Nymeria. 2 dire wolves were more than a match for any one man, even Jaime Lannister. He should have stayed in the tower and allowed Arya to deal with the night. "Keep the dire wolves by your side. Ghost will defend you with his life. The Iron Throne wants you dead. Are you going to make it easy for them?" "No, of course not. I won't go gentle into the night." Joffrey and the Lannisters had played their hand. Jon would not make the same error again. He would make them pay. "You are the last child of Rhaegar." He dreamed that the prince that was promised would come from his line. "You must fulfill that prophecy." "Our father dreamed of many things, sister. It did not help him much. Not during his life, no. But some things matter more than the lives of princes and kings. The Targaryens have always dreamed of things to come. Daenerys saw the doom of Valyria. Rhaegar believes that you are the prince that was promised, and yours is the song of ice and fire. How can anyone trust that prophecy? The tales of Azir, Ahai, were old when the Valyrians were herding sheep in the shadows of 14 flames, Jon complained. The song of fire and ice, what does that even mean? The lady shrugged. Only the gods know. We can only play our roles the best we can. It is your glory and burden to redeem the name of House Targaryen. I never asked for this, Raxians. Forrest claims that the Lord of Light has chosen me as champion against the Great Other. Why can't the gods bugger off and fight each other? I never asked to be murdered when I was 3, or to see my mother raped and killed before my eyes. The world is cruel, but if you do not fight for our house, then our deaths will be in vain. Will you fight for me? For my memory. She placed her hands on his face. Of course, Rhaenys, I would do anything for you, Jon said. A smile lit up the beautiful olive face. We don't have much time, beloved. I have 3 visions to show you before you awake. Our fathers, Jon asked skeptically. No, mine. Rosier pressed her sweet lips into his, and he fell once again into darkness. The maesters and acolytes had been pushed away, forced to wait with the guards and the nobles. A small group of Jonson's confidants were allowed to come closer. Owen, Alaris, Alain Hightower. Prince Oberyn squeezed in by offering marish fire to clean the lacerations. The Wintertown crew took the vial, but refused to allow anyone else to attend to the body. Ched and the other boys took sole responsibility for cutting away the shafts, stopping the bleeding, and bandaging the wounds. The little birds delivered hot coals, washed scalpels, and dry blankets. Rosier agreed with their caution. She did not trust anyone in Maidenpool, not the maesters, the Dornish, and certainly not the Tyrells. Sir Barristan had saved her brother from the third goal, so he received a grudging pass. Besides the old knight, Arya wanted only Northmen near Jon. The Wintertown boys were loyal, and so were the 2 dire wolves and the black tomcat prowling the hall. Nymeria and Ghost frightened the servants and reachmen. But Arya didn't care. Her brother's safety was far more important. Lady Arya, we are ready to take out the second bolt, Chet called out. How is he? She demanded. We have stopped the bleeding in the shoulder. His right arm will be weak for some time, but it should heal. The second quarrel did not hit bone, and the head did not break. Thank goodness. We have widened the wound area and fixed the loop around the tip. There will be blood when we take the bolt head out, but it should be manageable. That's good news, right? Jon will recover. Ordinarily it would be, but he held up the broken shaft that had gashed the right shoulder. The head was streaked with multiple colors. The reddish-brown might be dried blood, but the dark purple was certainly not. What is that? Poison, Alvarez took the quarrel gingerly. My father is an expert on the subject. The red viper sniffed the head. The fragrance was slightly bitter, like unripened fruit in summer. Deadly nightshade. In small quantities, it makes you drowsy and sleepy. But the juice of the berries can cause convulsions, delirium, and hallucinations. That is not my concern, Chet said. It is the dried blood. The bolt head went through the shoulder quickly. That is not Master Snow's blood. We scraped the brown off and examined it under the near eye. It is the plague. Monstrous to use the plague against a man trying to cure the disease. Will Snow fall sick? Olenna asked. Not from the first quarrel, but the second has been embedded in his body for many hours. Any poison smeared on the head may have already spread. The maester believed that plague in the blood was the deadliest of the three. Chet bowed his head. Arya glared at the seated Jaime Lannister, his wrists and ankles bound in thick rope. Capturing the knight had not been difficult. The Hound and Brienne arrived soon after Ghost, but the credit belonged to a company of Tyrell guardsmen. A dozen long spears forced Jaime to surrender. This is your fault, Kingslayer. You are responsible if Jon dies. I was at Jonquil's pool. I had nothing to do with the attack on your brother. Then how do you explain this? Garland held out a crossbow with a golden lion on the prod. Garland's men found the well-crafted weapon on the floor of a private room at the old Plough Inn. The shooter had disappeared. It is not mine. I have never touched a crossbow in my life. You were part of the plot, Ordeer insisted. Jon has not left the tower for weeks. Yet the assassin was waiting to take a shot from the window. He must have known you would attract my brother's attention. You lured Jon out so he would be killed. Jaime's face turned serious. I was not aware of any plot. I knew your brother had come south to treat Garland Tyrell's wife for the plague, but I did not come here to kill him. Why are you here, Kingslayer? And what about you, Sir Barristan? We heard that you left Westeros in a huff. Has Maidenpool become the new home of the White Cloaks? How did you know to come here? Without you, Snow would be dead. Olenna said, I am no longer a White Cloak, Barristan said calmly. Men of the Kingsguard do not change, Oberyn said. White Cloaks enjoy taking orders. So who gave them? Who told you to come to Maidenpool? I don't answer to you, Prince Oberyn. Barristan replied, but you answer to someone. As for Jaime, did you come on the orders of your father or your son? Both were humiliated at Tyrion's wedding. Oberyn smiled at the memory. I am not here to kill Jon Snow. I swear on my honor that is the truth, Yavin said. And you are so very famous for your honor, Olenna quipped. Saxon has committed many crimes. He profaned his sword with the blood of the king he had sworn to defend. He broke his oath to Robert Baratheon in a different way. But I doubt he would help kill your brother with a crossbow. Barristan said, he might have hired the shooter, Arya argued. The golden-haired knight snorted in disgust. I don't pay people to fight for me. I am a knight. If I wanted to kill your brother, I would do it with my own hands. You wouldn't have succeeded. Jon Snow was well protected in the tower. Sandor Clegane and I would have stopped you, Brienne said. Maybe we will never know that now. Snow will die from the plague if he doesn't bleed to death or pass away from poison. I am sorry for that. When I was a captive at Riverrun, he treated me well. I hoped that he would cure the plague. My brother is not dead yet, and I still believe that you were involved. Kingslayer, Arya turned to the Wintertown boys, lock him up in a cell. For what crime? I didn't attack Snow. Jaime protested. That remains to be seen, Arya said. My lady, I am not sure we can imprison Sir Jaime, Brienne said uncomfortably. The Tyrell men captured him. It should be Sir Carlin's decision. His men keep the peace in Maidenpool. I don't know if we can take him prisoner. There is no proof that Jaime Lannister was involved in the shooting. Garland said, you can and you will. My brother came to Maidenpool at your behest. He risked his life to help your wife. House Tyrell failed to ensure his security. I want the Kingslayer arrested. Otherwise, Jon will return north on a ship, and your maesters can fail to do anything about the plague. We agree, Lady Arya, Chet said. We are here only for Lord Snow. We follow him. If he dies, then we follow you. He won't die. Arya said fiercely, holding the cold, clammy hand. Remove the second bolt. My brother will return. Others might question the logic of her declaration, but she believed in him. Jon Snow was too stubborn to die. The city was beautiful, full of gardens and fountains, wide cobblestone streets, crisscrossed canals and bridges, and a mighty river flowed past temples, plazas, and palaces on both banks. There were even marble buildings artfully placed on islands in the water. The stone arches and slender domes reminded him of the architecture of Dorne, but this was no wasteland of deserts and rocks. The land here was far richer, and the structures grander than anything in Westeros. Do you know where we are, Rosieris? This is one of the city-states of Essos, but the cities of the ancient Rhoynar were destroyed long ago. Not just any city, Rosien, but beautiful and great. The festival city of Mother Rhön. Jon nodded. The Rhoynar never had a true capital or empire. They lived in many city-states along the branches of the river, often embroiled in petty feuds, but uniting against common enemies. No one presented a true danger until the dragons came. They walked down from the western bank along a large bridge, rising 40 feet in the air. Beacon lamps glowed brightly under the pale arches, and out of the clear flowing water, thick black vines reached up the tall piers. They descended down a long flight of marble steps. Lomas Longstrider was wrong. The Palace of Love, the greatest building in a great city, deserved a place among the 9 wonders of the world. The Westerosi traveler had seen the ruins when the fortress had been renamed the Palace of Sorrow. The castle was famous as a lover's retreat, where torrid affairs were conducted in lush gardens bursting with flowers and by fountains of ivory and gold. Jon saw no one frolicking or laughing. The palace bristled with warriors, thousands of armed men and women. Ornate iron armor, thick gold armbands, and jeweled torques showed that these were not soldiers but captains and chieftains. They entered a great hall filled with the leaders of Rhoynar. It shall go ill for any man who fails me. The olive-skinned speaker was slender and had a sharp nose. He wore less gold and finery than others, but dominated the room. The gray eyes surveyed the other princes and lords, daring anyone to challenge him. A touch of madness filtered through the ardent gaze and cruel mouth. This was not a man to be taken lightly. Our armies have taken Sopluz and Valasar. We rule the waters from Goyen Dro Haid to Sarmel. Why not stop, Prince Garin? Volantis will agree to terms. The Valyrians want ports on the narrow sea. The woman wore a shirt of beaten copper scales that extended from the neck down to the knees. Iron greaves and pauldrons completed the armor. Why should we stop? The Valyrians began this war. They burnt our cities, despoiled our temples, and stole our land. Are we slaves to kiss the hand that would force us to bend the knee? Garin said with passion. They have dragons. And we have the greatest army ever assembled and water magic gifted by Mother Rhön. We can defeat a few dragons. Volantis has 3 dragons. Valyria has many, many more. We cannot hope to win this war. Swallow your pride, Prince. Make peace. Let the Valyrians have Volantis and their ports while we keep the Rhine. No, that only delays our subjugation. Look what has happened to our lands. Norvos and Coher to the north, Pentos and Tyros to the west, Volantis to the south. Their colonies surround us. The freehold wishes to absorb us. The cost of freedom may be high, but the Rhoynar will pay it. We always have. I will never choose to be a slave. Who will fight with me? The crowd roared in affirmation, swayed by Garin's boldness. Only the woman had better sense. The wistful frown was a foreshadowing of suffering to come. Jon wondered if any of the other nobles in the hall survived the Second Spice War. Rosiers took his hand, and the palace faded away. What do you think of my people? A proud and difficult bunch. Nymeria is a credit to House Martell, Jon said. No one but the princess of Nyxir spoke against Garion the Great. She was what the storybooks proclaimed, beautiful, strong-willed, shrewd. The Rosier should have listened to her. Had they made overtures, the freehold would have agreed to a truce. Volantis is a city of slaves and rich families, not fighters. It might not have mattered. Prince Garin was rash, but not wrong. The dragons would have not left the waters of the Rhone alone. Great empires are not maintained by timidity. Rosier shook her head. The freehold did not care about a few walled towns on the Rosen. That was not why Garen was the wonder of the Rosenyear. 3 dragon lords fought for Volantis. He killed 3 dragons in one battle. That was what sparked the fury of Valyria. How did he achieve such a feat? Poisoned arrows? Scorpion bolts? Jon asked, his curiosity piqued. Full-grown dragons flying in the sky were hard to kill. I cannot see the battle at Volon Theris. Prince Garen was strong in water magic. He was blessed by Mother Rowing as the Valyrians learned to their cost. The sky began to lighten. Rhaenys and Jon were among soldiers, thousands of men, perhaps even hundreds of thousands, overlooking a great harbor. The ring slewed south under a long bridge that stretched east to the great black walls of Volantis. They felt the presence before the great black shapes broke through the morning clouds. Dragons. Jon did not need to hear the flap of leathery wings or the eager screeches as the beasts readied their flames. The greatness and glory of his house and the terror and horror of others. A green and gold dragon swooped down and set the hill on fire. A dozen more followed, strafing the tents, destroying the wagons, ripping apart horses and men like giants swatting flies. A thunder of dragons filled the skies, their angry roars drowning out the screams of burning soldiers. Aegon and his sisters had won the field of fire against the kingdoms of the Rock and the Reach with only 3 dragons. The Valyrian freehold had unleashed 300 against the more than 200,000 strong host. Dragons blotted out the sun. The men died bravely. They held their positions, their archers and crossbowmen firing into the sky. But the scales of a dragon thickened and hardened with age. These were war dragons with experienced riders, and missiles only enraged them. Death came out of the dragons' mouths. The soldiers began to break and run, only to be annihilated by fire. The air itself seemed to be burning. No army known could withstand 300 dragons. Perhaps not even the old gods and the new could defeat such a host. This was not a battle, but a massacre. Garen did not surrender. He drew his sword and stood on a hill as the army attempted a fatal retreat up the banks of the river. The Prince of Troyan meant to sell his life as dearly as possible to buy time for his men. The Dragon Lords had other ideas. First, they killed Garen's retainers with lances and arrows. Then the Valyrians threw weighted nets, dragging the prince down. They hooted and jeered as Garen was bound with rope and forced to watch the utter destruction of the Roner forces. They tortured him for weeks. The Valyrian lords carried him in a golden cage and dragged him back to the city of Troyan. Along the way, they destroyed Cermel in an orgy of looting and plunder. The dragons flew north and crushed every city on the road. They saved Troyan the Beautiful for last. But that was their great error. Do you know the story? Jon nodded. I do, but you tell it far better. They hung Gain in a golden cage over the Bridge of Dream as the Valyrians, lords, and Valantin lackeys sacked the city. The Royen ran red with the blood of slaughtered men, women, and children. Every soul in Troyen was put to the sword or sold into slavery. As his captors mocked and taunted him, Prince Garen called upon Mother Royen to destroy them. That night, the waters rose and drowned the invaders, and the survivors began to die of grayscale. From then on, Troyen and the other cities have been lost to the sorrows. For 1,000 years, there has been no law or customs on the Royen, just stone men, pirates, and merchants afraid of ruined cities, but the dragons never returned. A terrible tale of a terrible time. Our Valyrian ancestors were cruel people in a cruel world. Our ancestors were not just Valyrian, we are also descended from the Rhoynar. The blood of Nymeria flows through your veins. Not very much, Rhaenys. Yakja Martell was your mother, not mine. Diarion the Good married a Martell, and his son Maekar married a Dane. The Targaryens have a great deal of Dornish blood. You were born in the Tower of Joy. Your last name may be Snow, but might have been Sand. The story of Prince Garen matters. He deserves justice. The past is the past. This was 1,000 years ago. Terrible things were done by both sides, although the Dragon Lords killed more women and children, but they are all dead. Not all of them. Prince Garen is alive. His body is buried under the waters of Cryan. Find him, Daemon. He has suffered for 1,000 years. He deserves peace. Jon nodded. He did not truly understand, but that was not an unusual state of mind. Could anyone survive 1,000 years? How did Garen slay dragons? Those were mysteries to be unraveled, puzzles to be solved once he had time. Besides, he could never say no to Rhaenys. There was no sign of the shooter. Targaryen's men searched the town and the castle thoroughly. They emptied out the taverns and inns, checked the pavilions, and scoured the shanties and huts outside the pink stone walls. Besides 5 silver stags and the crossbow with the golden lion, there were no clues. The fat innkeeper happily handed over the coins, but did not remember who paid for the room. He was too frightened to lie, Arya thought, as she picked up the stag with Joffrey's smirking face with a gloved hand. Arya held up the silver coin to Nymeria. The she-wolf sniffed, and then looked at her quizzically. Nymeria twisted her head away from the inn to the mill on the commons. Then the wolf bounded south toward the pink stone walls. Several times Nymeria stopped, unsure until they came to the fish market next to the harbor. There, the smells assailed them, baskets of trout and salmon, crabs of 3 different types and sizes, mussels, clams, shrimp, and long snake-like eels. The wolf rested her nose on the ground, unwilling to go down to the docks. Rosier sighed. The trail was cold. The stags might have been handled by the innkeep, his wife, and the serving wenches. Like much of the port, the Old Plough Inn was crowded with chenzers, small folk fishing the Bay of Crabs, hawked fresh and not-so-fresh fish from stalls to the reachmen. More patients along with their families traveled on the ferry between Salt Pans, the Quiet Isle, and Maidenpool. She turned to go back when a slender man with shiny, long, straight hair stepped out of the shadows. This time, he wore the gray robe of an SSE priest, rather than prisoner's rags or soldier's plate. Jake and Hegar. Arya stepped back into a crouch. A girl looks lost. You are far away from Florian's tower. Arya of House Stark. Why are you in Maidenpool? The worn iron coin with the strange Valyrian words rattled in her pouch. Ymria growled, Were you sent here to kill Jon? Did Joffrey hire you? Jaqen chuckled and held out 2 open and clean hands. He was weaponless, but Arya recalled how easily he had killed the targets at Harrenhal. A man had no part in that. If I shot a crossbow bolt at Jon Snow, he would be dead, and your brother is not. She relaxed her grip on Needle. Do you know who the shooter was? A man is not certain, but he suspects a name. There are many plotters in King's Landing, and that crossbow was made for the king. Jaqen said, What name? Is he still in Maidenpool? Jaqen shook his head. A man owed a girl for 3 lives that she took from the Red God. He has repaid those lives back. To get something, a girl must give something. Very little is free in Bravos, and even less in the House of Black of White. Irasier bit her lip. Nymeria sat on her haunches, watching carefully. I have the iron coin you gave me. I have some gold and silver back at the tower. She knew that would not be enough. Why are you here? In Maidenpool? Jon told me that your order was founded in ancient Valyria. Your brother is correct. How is he? Is he healing? He has not woken in a day. The Wintertown boys think that he should recover, but the quarrels were poisoned and smeared with the plague. He has not developed signs of being sick yet. The plague strikes quickly. Even the healthy can die in a few days. Can Snow truly cure the disease? I think so. He was close before he was shot. Jon discovered a great deal. Arya thought of the near eye and the dishes of animal keels. What will your brother do if he finds the cure? What do you mean? He will cure the sick patients in Maidenpool. More and more are coming every day, Arya said. The world is more than Maidenpool. The plague rages in Bravos and the free cities. A man who can cure the plague would be showered with gold and much more. The Magisters will be eager to acquire such a medicine. Very, very eager. What will your brother do? I am not sure. I don't think he has given much thought. Jon was focused on treating the plague. Would you kill his enemies for the cure? Arya asked. A girl asks for much. Your brother has many enemies, but Bravos, from the Sea Lord to the Iron Bank, the merchants to the priests, would pay much for the cure, and the secret city will not be the only bidder. The Iron Throne, the other kingdoms in Westeros, the Archons and Lords of Essos, they will all covet your brother's remedy. Jon will do what Jon wants. No prince or king will make him do anything. Arya said fiercely. A girl has a great deal of confidence. Very few survive alone against princes and kings. A word of caution. Men tried to kill Jon Snow. They may try again. Protect your brother Arya Stark. All men die. Jackson Gar bowed slightly and slipped away into the dark. The sun gave forth light without brightness. It was noon, but there was a chill in the air, and a strange lack of shadows, as if the feeble light was as unclear as darkness. Rosiernes held his hand as they looked out at the dense forest. The pine and cedar trees were large, the trunks wide and thick, and the leaves a canopy of gold and green. A faint smell of ash and sulfur infused the air, like the residue of dragon flame. "Where are we?" Jon asked. "That is not the right question. You should ask when." The primordial forest stretched far in every direction. The trees were larger than the pines, firs, and evergreens near Winterfell, and matched the oldest oak trees of the Wolfswood. There were forests that Jon had never seen. The Kingswood south of Blackwater Rush, the Rainwood in the Stormlands, and smaller diminished forests that remained in the Riverlands, the Vale of Arryn and the Reach. None of those had the grandeur of this place, or the silver-tailed lemurs jumping through the branches, hiding from tree cats and harrier hawks. This must be the forest of Koshel. The vast woodland separated the cities of western Essos from the Dothraki Sea. Before Koshel became a center of armors and sword-making, the wealth of the free city rested on trading caravans and timber. But why is it so cold? Why do you think, beloved, you have dreamed of this? Many times. Jon realized what she meant. The Doom of Valyria, when the 14 flames erupted and threw ash and rock into the sky. But Kohor is 1,500 miles north. Very little is written about the Doom. The Maesters claim that 14 volcanoes destroyed the greatest empire ever known to man, but they never explain how. Either they don't know, or they lie by omission. Ratings say it must have been a terrible death, not by fire, but by everything that came afterwards. Sulfur and ash spewing into the air, waves of hot gas and lava sweeping down the mountains. If the sun was dim in Kolhor, then the skies must have been dark in Valyria. Ryanes nodded. The dragons died quickly. They nested near the volcanoes and burned alive in the great heat. But the people, they died in fear and suffering. Clouds of gas killed the lucky ones. Mud flows with molten fire poured into the streets and squares of the cities, and after the explosions, the lands were shattered and a great tsunami formed that destroyed the port cities in the Isle of Cedars and coastal villages in Slaver's Bay. The waves were 100 feet high. In the rest of Essos, ash and dust covered the sky. Crops failed, trees shriveled, snow fell in summer, people starved, and the plague spread. "The gods are cruel," Jon said. "Was it the gods, or a conspiracy of men?" Rosie said. "Could men have really destroyed the 14 flames? You saw the carnage at Volantis, how dragons annihilated the army of the Rhine. They were the glory of ancient Valyria. But the terror and dread of our enemies, why wouldn't they attempt to kill the dragons? And by killing the dragons, millions more died," Jon said. "The Doom killed hundreds of thousands. The famine that ensued lasted for 5 years and came with the plague. Volantis declared itself the heir to Valyria and waged war for 2 generations. The Dothraki descended like locusts from the grasslands and steppes, and pirates raided sots like Irios and the Summer Sea for slaves. All this to kill the dragons." Rainsy spat. He wondered whether that was the way of the world. Blood followed blood. Some ancient king decreed an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and had been lauded for handing down a code of justice. But personal vengeance was a poor way to rule. The dragon lords who tortured Prince Garin deserved disgrace and censure. But the doom of Valyria, whether it was the wrath of the gods or the sorcery of men, fell 700 years later, and the death toll included far more than a few dozen dragon riders. The birds scattered, taking flight deeper into the darkest parts of the forest. Large beasts, elk, deer, monstrously large boars, and spotted bears fled past them, driven away by the steady clip-clop of hooves. A detachment of light cavalry invaded the forest, likely the outriders for a much larger force. Through the trees, Jon saw the glint of steel from helmets, mail, and spears. Orion's army, he was in Kohar during the Doom. Orion declared himself the first emperor and raised forces from the Koharic, and Sellswards. He attempted to lay claim to the remains of the freehold with 30,000 men and a dragon. Razian said, "The dragon lords were too proud for their own good. Power did not equate to wisdom." "Did his army even make it to the Valyrian peninsula?" Jon asked. "He was never seen again. I don't care very much about some dragon lord hell-bent on power or soldiers hired with promises of loot. It is the other deaths that I mourn. After Orion disappeared, the Kuhoric killed his children. The dragon seeds in Tyrus and Lys were hunted down. Volantis calls itself the first daughter, but was a thankless child. They offered no shelter to those who survived the doom. The old blood only cared about power, wealth, and enslaving others. Volantis is a city of slaves and masters. They have no claim to the heritage of the freehold. Not our steel, science, sorcery, or dragons. Volantis has all the sins of Valyria, but none of the greatness, Jon quipped. The heart of the slave trade resides there. 1 million people live in the city, and 4 out of 5 are slaves. The curse of ancient Gots. When Valyria destroyed the old empire, it took on the worst practices of the Gotscary. Slavery was an abomination. The Andals and the First Men both forbid the trade, although Jon wondered if life as a thrall in the Iron Isles was much better. At least the children of a thrall were born free. He had no doubt that the Ironborn, like the Dysraki, sold prisoners in the flesh markets of Essos. The Valyrians took thousands and thousands of slaves. The slaves built the cities and roads, fought in the arenas, served as concubines, tended the fields, and died in the mines under the 14 flames. Our people are not without blame. No man or woman wants to be owned. Dragons were born free. They choose to give their loyalty to a rider, but it is their choice alone. The way of the dragon should be the model for all. Westeros has no dragons. The sailors say Daenerys has 3, but our aunt is far away. The world is full of sheep and lions, stags, and roses who squabble for a throne. Once we were dragons. Once the world looked to us to bring order and peace. The freehold. Aegon the Conqueror. Jaehaerys the Wise. Those are the stories. The truth is always messier. Only a few kings were ever just and good. We remember them because they were the exceptions, not the rule. You are a dragon, Daemon. Never forget that you are the heir to Valyria. Show the world what the freehold should have done. Make peace the custom, spare the conquered, and wage war until the haughty are brought low. Those are hard things, and more difficult without armies or dragons, he complained. Rhaenys laughed and kissed him. No one said it would be easy, my love. Arya stood over the sleeping form of her sister. The breath of life kept her alive, but Nymeria Sand suffered. Her red lips had turned pale, her dark eyes sunken, and her elegant cheekbones gaunt and bony. Surviving a month was impressive, but no herb would forestall the plague forever. Arya patted the long black braid of hair that ran down to the waist. Nyme had always been the loveliest of the sand snakes, as beautiful as their cousin Arya. Why aren't we doing more? Obara asked angrily. Their sister Tyrion hovered nearby, the pale, soft hands clasped together in a simulacrum of prayer. There are no known cures. Jon remains our best hope. He hasn't woken up, Tyrion said. Arya thought that was for the best. Archmeister Ibros taught that in severe trauma, the mind could heal better asleep. Upon further examination, her father determined both quarrels were smeared with different poisons in addition to the plague. It has only been 2 days. Nini doesn't have the time. Take Snow's tools and notes. With father's help, you can find a cure just as easily as he can. Ubara said. Alirez shook her head. Father is an expert at poison, not medicine. Snow is a better healer than both of us, and no one can take his tools. The Wintertown boys had set up a vigil over their fallen master. Since the attack, nothing had been moved. The work desk remained undisturbed, with papers and parchment scattered near glass dishes and oddly shaped flasks, tubes, and bottles. With heat, the tesslates could be used to condense, dissolve, and purify all sorts of substances. Metal frames and clay crucibles were stacked in a corner with tongs, rods, and mortars. A tray piled high with untouched bread and cheese lay next to the near eye along with 3 small notebooks. What is in those notebooks? Tyrion asked. Sketches and drawings. At the Citadel, Jon recorded everything that interested him in journals. Those 3 likely contain his most recent thoughts on the plague. Alira's guessed. I have heard that the books hold much more designs for bridges and dams, flying machines, studies of the stars, and theories on the movement of water. The Northmen say that Snow created a farm on the White Knife that might feed the whole of the North, Tyrion said. So, we know from the war against the Lannisters that Jon is capable of invention, and while he has many ideas, not all of them may work. Tyrion wants to take the books back to Dorne, Obara said. Theft is theft, no matter what you steal. The North will never agree, Olores said. If we don't take them, the Tyrells will. Those journals may have great value. Why should the Reach profit from Snow's knowledge? I've watched the other maesters. If Snow dies, they will grab the Near Eye and everything else. The children from the North will not be able to stop the roses, Tyrion said. Jon is not dead. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. If you steal from Snow or harm his people, he will not forgive or forget. House Martell is in Snow's debt. He captured Lorch, killed the Mountain, and cured our sister. Olores argued. Nymeria is still dying from the plague. He did not succeed. Not yet. There is still time. I have not given up hope. Neither should you. Her sisters grumbled but grudgingly accepted her words. After 2 days, Barristan decided that he served no real purpose in the tower. Snow was heavily guarded. Besides the Hound and Brienne of Tarth, Sargarlan and Oberyn Martell watched for potential threats. The most zealous defenders were the young boys and girls, led by Arya Stark and the 2 enormous dire wolves. Barristan knew his limitations. He was home in tourney grounds and training yards, both as a fighter and a teacher. In Meereen, he instructed dozens of freed slaves and noble children in chivalry and combat. The students had taken well to the lessons, although more to fighting than gallantry. If he returned to the Queen, he hoped to train a new order of knights loyal to the Targaryens, give him a clear opponent to battle, a Maxleys, the Monstrous, or Simon Toyne, and Barristan knew what to do. Against invisible enemies, he was helpless. Snow might die of poison or the plague, and then the mission would end in failure. He entered the castle. The Mudan men-at-arms were outnumbered by a sea of Tyrell guards in green cloaks, particularly near the captive. The jailer, a young knight of a minor house sworn to Highgarden, took his sword before opening the cell. Come to kill me? I am an easy target now without sword and armor. This is your chance to finally beat me. Even bound and shackled, Jaime Lannister was quick to mock. I have defeated you many times, Cyril, when we were both armed and armored. Barristan had lost a few spars as well. Whatever his sins, the Kingslayer was a capable fighter. Last time we met, I knocked you on your arse. That was a joust, at a tourney. It would go differently on a battlefield. I didn't come here to bandy words or compare our skill with swords and lances. Why are you here, Sir Barristan? You think too highly of yourself to enjoy visiting prison cells. These surroundings might stain your precious honor. Jaime snorted. I heard the Reachmen talk about the wildfire wedding. They said there were thousands of jars buried under the Red Keep and much of King's Landing. Yes, Aerys kept his pet pyromancers busy. Rats running around the tunnels. I should have killed all of them, not just 3, Jaime lamented. Then it is true that Aerys wanted to burn the whole city? Barristan asked uncomfortably. Jaime nodded. Why did you not tell us about the plot? Anger crossed the handsome face. For a moment, Jaime resembled the 15-year boy who crossed swords with the smiling knight and earned a knighthood from Arthur Dayne, brash, cocksure, and oddly vulnerable. It passed, and the Kingslayer returned to flippant banter. Who was I supposed to tell? Ned Stark, who scorned me as an oath-breaker. Robert Baratheon, who was pleased to see the butchered bodies of Aegon and Rhaenys. Or my father, who ordered the children murdered and wrapped in Lannister cloaks to hide the blood. We would have known why you killed the king. We might have thought differently of... I don't care what you think. I killed Aerys because he was a mad dog. He deserved to die. No one asked why I killed Rosiart. He was Hand of the King for a fortnight. No one cared. They were only happy to divide the spoils and eager to move on. The last days of the rebellion were hard times. Barristan had been wounded badly at the Trident, pierced by arrow, sword, and spear. By the time he could walk again, King's Landing was sacked. Jaime had killed Aerys, and Alia, Yadan, and Rhaenys were all dead. He regretted taking Robert's pardon, but what else could he do? Viserys was only a boy of 7. I should have killed Aryes earlier. You swore an oath when you joined the Kingsguard, Barristan said. You swore an oath as well, to defend the innocent, to protect women and children, to stand for justice. What did you do when Aerys burned Rickard and Brandon Stark? What would you have done if he ordered you to burn down King's Landing? Sir Barristan shook his head sadly. Aerys was a terrible man. Rogier should have been king. I begged the prince to take me with him. If I had been by his side, I might have killed Robert at the Trident. Then everything would be better. Before he left, Rhaegar promised me that changes would be made when he returned. What changes did he mean? Barristan wondered. I don't know. The prince never returned. House Baratheon won. The only thing Robert cared about was drinking, whoring, and fathering bastards. You fathered bastards too, sir, Barristan chided. Not 20, and not inside of my wife. He fathered a storm in Stannis' wedding bed. Had Rhaegar been king, I would not have strayed from my vows. I would have been happy to fight on his behalf, to die for a king who was worthy of the crown. The last dragon, but that wasn't true. Dame Cersei was the last dragon. Despite the prying of Lady Olenna and Prince Oberyn, Barristan had not revealed his loyalty to the last Targaryen. He prayed that she would be more like her brother than her father. A strong summer breeze blew off the water through the high and narrow windows of Maegor's Holdfast. The sun glinted on the deep blue of Blackwater Bay, and the day promised to be pleasant for both sets of cousins. Warm enough for the Martells and cool enough for the Starks. For once, he dressed in the colors of his house, blacks and reds, with the three-headed red dragon prominent on his black surcoat. He even wore a crown, but only a plain gold circlet, unornamented. The courtiers whispered that such a coronet was unworthy of the Prince of Summerhall, but he had never cared. Your Grace. A voice came from outside the bedroom. The prince is still preparing. Daemon had better get his arse ready. My sister is scarier than my brother. The door opened and the Prince of Dragonstone pushed through. Egg. Jon fastened the red cloak with a brooch of a white wolf. Aegon smiled mischievously. I was worried that you would run away from your wedding. And what would you have done if I did? Dragged you back to the altar. No one wants to make Rainsy upset. Yaxon Divide chuckled. He had all the beauty of their father, with silver gold hair and purple lilac eyes, but none of the melancholy. He was a true Dornishman. Stubborn, fiery, and passionate in both the pursuit of pleasure and power. Some lords whispered that he was puerile, but they were wrong. One day, Aegon would make a great and fearsome ruler. This was a wonderful dream, but only a dream. His wedding day, in King's Landing, he would marry Rhaenys and the Septa Baelor before all of Westeros. In this world, Rhaegar was king. Lyanna and Ilya lived, and his family was happy and whole. This would never be. Come, brother, you look pretty enough. Aegon led him away, past servants and men-at-arms. Several ladies turned red as they passed, and Jon rolled his eyes at his brother's exploits. At last, they reached the gate where the Kingsguard waited with a magnificent white stallion. This isn't mine. You are a Targaryen prince, Daemon. You can't ride a pitiful nag more fit for the knackers than a royal wedding. The destroyer was tall and high-spirited, with a majestic air. A Lannister or a Tyrell might ride this at a tourney to prove their wealth and breeding. The saddle shone brightly in the sun, and the bridle and halter were soft, supple calfskin. If they were not with other knights, he might have balked. He preferred rugged horses, smaller and stockier with strong legs and the stamina to deal with uncertain terrain. The destroyer was perfect for a joust in the Reach or Stormlands, but fared poorly in heat, cold, hunger, and war, unlike Jon's string of hardy Dothraki mares. He mounted the stallion while his brother jumped on a golden sand steed, a gift from his Dornish uncles. Sir Arthur, as Lord Commander, rode in front, while Barristan and Jaime guarded the sides. With their escort of white cloaks, the princes rode down the King's Way to the Sept of Baelor with small folk cheering. As they passed under the arch to enter the white marble plaza, Aegon raised both their arms in triumph to the roars of the crowd. Rhaenyra waited under the central dome, where the light scintillated through the glass and gold and crystal. She was a vision in a sleeveless silk gown of red and gold and orange. Like him, she also wore a modest circlet of gold. Rhaenyra did not need gems or jewels or extra finery to look like a queen. She radiated fierceness and grace, like Princess Nymeria, reborn. Jon took her hand, and they walked away from the laughing ladies in waiting. You look lovely, but not very Targaryen. I am the daughter of the sun. In Dorne, the sun is deadlier than the spear. He smiled. Do you intend to resist my conquest? She cradled his head in her hands. I never have, beloved. The sun can burn enemies, but it also leads the way with light. After darkness, after the rains and storms, the sun heals. Rhaenyra, this is beautiful, but it was beautiful. Near the marble pulpit, King Rhaegar sat on a high balcony, flanked by his two queens. Arya Martell was gentle and kind, and accepted him as her daughter's suitor. Lyanna Stark loved him like a mother should love her child, honestly and plainly, with tenderness and strength. At the pews before the statues of the father and mother, a charming Aegon joked with both the Starks and the Martells. Even the Lannisters, Tyrells, and Baratheons were amiable and well-behaved, at least for the day. But this is not real. Our family died in the rebellion. You died from Lannister treachery. I would fight a dozen wars, but it will not bring you back, Jon said gently. I died, but my love for you is stronger than death. We were meant to be together, had Rhaegar forced Aerys to abdicate. This day would have come. Our marriage would have bound the North and Dorne to the Iron Throne and healed the wounds of the rebellion. You would have been Aegon's strong right hand, and I would have guarded his back. Our children would have married Aegon so that our bloodline remained Valyrian. Our children? Jon asked. 2 dragon riders. A boy named Aemon and a girl named Visenya. They will look like the dragon lords of old with silver gold hair and purple eyes. They will look nothing like us, Jon said, amused. No, but the realm will be at peace. They will be respected, honored, and happy, and their dragons will take them from the wall to Sunspear and beyond. It is a beautiful dream, a better fate than I could have imagined. But it is not possible, a family of his own, a land without war, and dragons. Nothing would make him happier. Not for us, Rosier. Yex's death meant our lives would be full of pain and suffering. But that is not true for Targaryens yet to be born. Restore our house, so that your children and children's children have a better tomorrow. One day they might wed in the great sept before their family. That would only be true if they were royal. Jon thought of Daemon's words on the Isle of Faces. Your sons will be kings, the rogue prince had said. He hesitated then, too involved in the conflict between the North and the Iron Throne. Jon never wanted power or riches. He did not care to be garbed in silks and satins or feast on roast swans washed down with arbor gold. But to hold a child of his own blood in his arms, that he would fight for. Those children will not be yours. No, but they will be dragons. She pulled his face to hers. She tasted like cinnamon bark from the summer isles, rich, sweet, and strong. There was fire in her lips, heat, warmth, and the world had forgotten Rhaenys as a casualty of war. But Jon would remember the daughter of the sun and the 3 visions. He kissed the sweet lips again and savored the taste. Wake up! Wake up! I have a gift for you on the desk, Rosier smiled. You have been sleeping for 3 days. Enough time for the cure to appear. You must wake, beloved. Do not forget me. Jon never would. The Septus of Baelor faded away, as did the faces of the family he never met. All he saw were gentle indigo eyes before darkness came. The pain began on his right side, a throbbing sensation in the numb fingers and wrist that hammered the way up the arm. Something was wrong with the shoulder. He tried to twist, but the joint was tender and swollen. The left side ached, but at least that arm could move. He raised his left hand to the face. Jon's lips were cracked, and his mouth sore and dry. Was that blood or vomit? His eyes took in the darkened room. Even lying down, he was dizzy, and his thoughts were disjointed and jumbled. Through the stained glass windows, light filtered through, and the black began to turn blue, almost purple. The sun was rising. Pain was a good thing. It meant you were alive. Somebody had tried to kill him, but he survived. The black Tom glared at Jon, the yellow eyes still glowing in the dawn, like lamps on the bridge of Troyan. Get up. Get up. Jon gritted his teeth and forced his left arm against the bed. He would rise. He stumbled against the bed as he got up. Baladan hissed, and Ghost woke up. The dire wolf immediately went to the left, allowing Jon to brace himself. There was warmth and comfort in the thick white fur. He lurched over to the table, the blood flowing back to his legs and arms. His mind was still clouded, but he began to take stock. He could move, but not run. Walking felt like wading through water. Stained bandages covered his right chest and left torso, but the blood was dry and the wounds had not reopened. He concentrated on the desk, remembering Rhaenys' final words. The dishes were all in a row, the plague bacterium growing in gel. Next to papers, beakers, and the near eye. Mold covered the stale bread, threatening the cup of sour red wine. One glass dish closest to the tray was contaminated with large spots of white, green, and blue. Like very bad cheese, Jon thought. Snow, you are awake. Garland, Tyrell cried. He ignored the pain, turning to the shocked faces in the room. There were the guards, Wintertown boys, little birds, Alaraz, Alwyn, Martells, and the Tyrells. Arya and Nymeria had just awoken. "How long have I been asleep?" His mouth was dry. 3 days, Arya said. "My lord, you need rest," Chet cried. "You likely have the plague. The crossbow bolts were poisoned, and the nightshade may have caused hallucinations," Alaris said. Dragon dreams were real. With his left hand, he took a swab of the mold on the dish and placed the glass in the pin of the near eye. Before, the black rods had squirmed around. Now the rods were dead, stationary near the plant like strings of green mold. This was Rhaenys' gift. She was right. 3 days had been enough time. "What is it?" Arya asked. Jon put down the near eye. "I know the cure to the plague.